Chapter 32-27. When Wang Kuang's fist landed, the invisible force surged like a torrent. The aura of the death god enveloped the demon hall disciple. Black tortoise shell. The demon hall disciple roared. The black tortoise shell appeared and blocked Wang Kuang's fist. Clang! When the fist landed on the shell, it was as if it had landed on a shield made of divine metal, causing a deafening explosion. At the same time, the demon hall disciple waved his other hand and the law of sword surged out, turning into a raging dragon that pounced at Wang Kuang's legs. Wang Kuang immediately screamed in pain. After all, the raging dragon was the fifth profound of the law of sword. Although Wang Kuang had activated the fifth profound of the law of force and his physical body was extremely strong, he couldn't take it all. Both his legs were lacerated and blood splattered everywhere. Their blood dyed the sky red. I am the god of war. I am immortal. Shatter for me. Wang Kuang roared, as if he didn't feel the pain of his legs being torn apart. He raised his fist and punched at the black tortoise shell again. He was like a wild beast, exuding a valiant aura that made the scalps of the spectators go numb. He was simply a battle maniac. With another loud clang, the black tortoise shell shattered on the spot. Wang Kuang's fist also cracked and blood flowed out, but he didn't care. He didn't even frown as he punched at the demon hall disciple. Do you think you're the only one who has grasped the law of force? The demon hall disciple roared and took a step back. His body also began to expand. However, in an instant, another 100,000 feet tall giant appeared. This is his third law of force, the Vice Alliance leader mumbled. He then looked at Wang Kuang and muttered, "Do your best. You can definitely do it." After the demon hall disciple activated the fifth profound of the law of force, he also punched at Wang Kuang with extreme strength. I didn't expect you to also comprehend the law of force. However, it's useless. I also have an absolute defense. Wang Kuang sneered as a new law of force appeared. The law of earth. The demon hall disciple frowned. That's right. The fifth profound black tortoise shell. Wang Kuang roared as the Xuanwu tortoise shell appeared, instantly blocking in front of him. The fist of the devil hall disciple landed on the tortoise shell, exploding forth with a shocking might. Amazing! Qin Feiyang muttered. Yeah. Originally I thought we were pretty strong. But now that I've seen them, I've realized that we're really not as strong as them. Madman nodded. Don't worry. Once you comprehend the fifth profundity of the laws of death, even if you can't defeat them, you'll at least be able to put up a fight. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Although the law of death was stronger than the other laws, the difference in cultivation couldn't be ignored. Even if the madman had comprehended the fifth profundity of the law of death, he would only be an initial ruler. There was still a gap of a minor realm between him and a minor ruler. In the sovereign realm, the difference of a single minor realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Can you stop talking about me? You have to work hard too. Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. I work hard. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Then he shook his head and smiled. Yeah, you should continue to work hard. This fellow still didn't know that he had comprehended the fifth profundity of the law of karma. Otherwise he would be hopping mad. Bang! Bang! Rumble! Wang Kuang and the demon palace disciple had transformed into giants that were 100,000 feet tall. They fought wildly, causing the sky to darken and blood to flow. They both had the law of force and the law of earth. The only difference was the law of war and the law of sword. The law of sword was also a pure offensive law. As for the law of war, it could be considered a support-type law. Therefore, they both had their own advantages. Wang Kuang had the law of war. No matter how serious his injuries were, he didn't care. The more he fought, the braver he became. However, his offensive power was slightly inferior. As for the demon palace disciple, he had the law of sword. His offensive power was much stronger than Wang Kuang's, but his willpower and mental power were weaker. If the battle ended quickly, the demon palace disciple would definitely win. However, if the battle dragged on, the demon palace disciple would definitely lose. This was because the pain caused by every exchange of blows would deepen his exhaustion and weakness. He couldn't fight like Wang Kuang, who didn't know fatigue and pain. Even if he lost an arm or a leg, Wang Kuang would still be lively. As expected, after an hour of battle, The Demon Palace disciple was sent flying by Wang Kuang's punch. Half of his body had almost been shattered. Wang Kuang's situation wasn't much better. His 100,000 feet tall body was riddled with wounds that were so deep that his bones could be seen. He was completely covered in blood. This was basically caused by the law of sword. If it were anyone else, they would have fainted long ago. However, he was still full of energy. There wasn't the slightest hint of fatigue between his brows. His fighting spirit was soaring. This was the law of war, the representative of protracted battles. It could be said that at the same cultivation level and with the same means, the person who had grasped the law of war could be considered invincible. Unless you could crush him like crushing dry weeds. The Demon Palace disciple is only a Wang Kuang laughed loudly. Don't be impudent. The battle isn't over yet. The Demon Palace disciple got up. The law of earth's fifth profundity, the black tortoise shell. The law of sword's fifth profundity, the raging dragon. The two profundities roared in the sky, carrying an apocalyptic aura as they charged toward Wang Kuang. Clang! Wang Kuang waved his hand and activated the law of earth. He grabbed the black tortoise shell and blocked in front of him. Boom! The Demon Palace disciple's black tortoise shell and the raging dragon collided with the black tortoise shell in Wang Kuang's hand. Wang Kuang's body shook as he spat out blood. The black tortoise shell in his hand also shattered. Roar! He let out a bestial roar as his 100,000 feet tall body leaned forward. It was almost as if his body was supporting the black tortoise shell. His body was also cracking inch by inch. Kill him! The Demon Palace disciple roared. His body was already collapsing to the ground. Obviously. This was his final attack. Boom! Crack! Although the black tortoise shell focused on defense, it also had lethality. Coupled with the law of sword's fifth profundity, its lethality had undoubtedly risen to another level. In less than 5 breaths of time, the black tortoise shell in Wang Kuang's hand shattered. The black tortoise shell and the dragon formed by the sword chi smashed into his chest. Puff! Wang Kuang spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying. His chest had also been pierced through by the dragon formed by the sword chi, leaving behind a huge blood puppet. Blood gushed out like a waterfall. This should be a lose-lose situation. Someone muttered. No, there won't be a lose-lose situation. At this moment, the one who has the fighting spirit and will to fight is the winner. And now, the one who has the fighting spirit and will to fight is Wang Kuang. Someone else spoke. Just as expected, Wang Kuang, who was sent flying, had a dazzling light in his eyes. This battle concerns the dignity of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. I must not lose. He roared as he stepped into the void and forcefully stabilized his body. The fighting spirit formed by the law of war roared around him. Following that, his entire body was like a violent dragon as he charged towards the Devil Hall disciple. His hands were shattered, but he still had his feet. When he reached the top of the Demon Palace disciple, he immediately stomped his foot on the Demon Palace disciple's head. No! The Demon Palace disciple roared. Now he no longer had the strength to fight. That was because the 2 profound divine abilities from before were already his limit. However, Wang Kuang remained unmoved. His mountain-like foot directly landed on the head of the Devil Hall's disciple. With a loud crack, the Demon Palace disciple's head shattered. A divine light shot out from the shattered head. It was the Demon Palace disciple's divine soul. Trying to escape? Wang Kuang smiled sinisterly and stomped his foot again. Have mercy! Elder Hu could no longer sit still and hurriedly shouted. However, Wang Kuang was still unmoved. His eyes emitted monstrous killing intent as he stomped on the divine soul. With another scream, the divine soul of the Demon Palace disciple was annihilated on the spot. We won. At this moment, the members of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance couldn't help but clench their fists. Their Rogue Cultivator Alliance had actually won. Although the truth was right in front of them, they still felt like they were dreaming. They had actually defeated the Demon Palace disciple and won the first round. The members of the Demon Palace fell silent. They never expected to lose the first round to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. This was a disgrace. Vice Alliance Leader, Hall Master, Great Elder I won. Wang Kuang was still standing in the void tenaciously. Looking at the Vice Alliance Leader and the others, a smile appeared on his blood-stained face. We won. It's been hard on you. The Vice Alliance leader and the other two leaders were also very excited. Next, it's up to you guys. Wang Kuang looked at the disciples and said before falling straight down. When the law of war and the law of force disappeared, he immediately fainted. His 100,000 feet tall body also returned to normal. He was covered in injuries and could be described as a tragic sight. Quick! The Vice Alliance leader shouted. The Great Elder came back to his senses and immediately stepped out to catch the falling Wang Kuang. He took out a divine life pill and stuffed it into Wang Kuang's mouth. Following that, the Great Elder began to check on Wang Kuang's injuries. If he didn't look, he wouldn't know. Fortunately, Wang Kuang had the law of war to protect his body. Otherwise, he would have died long ago. He carried Wang Kuang, looked at the people of the Demon Palace, and returned to the small island. How is it? The Vice Alliance leader and the Hall of Famers asked. His life is saved, but his vitality is greatly injured. I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to recover in a short period of time. The Great Elder said. It's good that he can keep his life. The Vice Alliance leader heaved a sigh of relief, looked at the Hall of Famers and said, Old Chi, set up a time array and let him recuperate inside. All right. The Hall of Famers nodded, then carried Wang Kuang and left. With the time array, the speed of recovery would be faster. Then, the Vice Alliance leader looked at Elder Hua and Chu Yuan and laughed. It seems that the disciples of my Rogue Cultivator Alliance are still better. Elder Hua and Chu Yuan frowned. He really didn't hide his flaunting. The other disciples of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance also began to hold their heads high and puff out their chests. Wang Kuang's victory not only gave the Vice Alliance leader and the other three big shots a sigh of relief, it also gave these disciples confidence. It turned out that the Demon Palace was not invincible. Chapter 32-28. Haha, how exciting! I never thought that the dignified Demon Hall would lose to a Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Could it be that the Rogue Cultivator Alliance is the overlord of the Eastern Continent? An ear-piercing laughter sounded. Elder Hua, Chu Yuan, and the 100 or so disciples of the Demon Hall immediately looked in the direction of the voice. They saw Elder Hai standing in the front row with a brilliant smile on his face. It's just a battle, what can it mean? Elder Hua said indifferently. Is this just a battle? Ask everyone here. Who doesn't understand the meaning of this battle? Could it be that in your eyes this is just a game? Elder Hai didn't hide the ridicule on his face. Elder Hua's eyes darkened. The group of disciples behind him was also furious. However, with Elder Hai's status and identity, they didn't dare to curse. They only dared to be angry but didn't dare to say anything. Ayaya! Let me see, where did this old dog come from? Suddenly, an exceptionally loud voice rang out. Everyone was stunned and looked in the direction of the voice. Turned out to be Madman. This fellow was indeed worthy of being a lawless person. He directly scolded in front of everyone. The core disciples of the Demon Hall couldn't help but admire him at this moment. Madman pretended to look for a while, then looked at Elder Hai and said, So it's you, old dog, I was wondering who it was. Elder Hai's eyes suddenly turned cold and were filled with shocking killing intent. You're still glaring at me? Look at your eyes, they're exactly the same as a dog's eyes. Madman's face was filled with disdain. Haha, as soon as he said that, it immediately caused everyone to burst into laughter. Especially the disciples of the Demon Hall, they laughed happily. Even Elder Hua and Chu Yuan couldn't help but laugh. Kid, you haven't died before, right? How dare you talk to Elder Hai like that? A purple-clothed youth jumped out and glared at Madman. Madman glanced at the purple-clothed youth and said disdainfully, Is there something wrong with your head? The purple-clothed youth was stunned. If there's nothing wrong with your head, why would you say such stupid words? If I've died before, would I be standing here talking to you? Idiot. Madman rolled his eyes. The purple-clothed youth was so angry that he trembled. What kind of logic was this? Wasn't it just a sentence? Why are you being so serious? The old are fools and the young are idiots. Alas, your blood hall is truly hopeless. Madman shook his head. Bastard, I want to fight you. The purple-robed youth took a step forward and glared at the madman. You? Madman sized up the purple-robed young man and chuckled. Back then, that old dog by your side and the Grand Deacon by your side came with 3 sovereign divine weapons, but they couldn't stop us. Little punk like you? Go play in the mud. The purple-robed young man's body was trembling, and his nose was crooked from anger. At this moment, another young man walked out and stood next to the purple-robed young man. He looked at the madman and said, "You also know that that's only if you have a sovereign weapon. However, the rules of the exchange clearly state that the use of sovereign weapons is prohibited." Rules? I'm not even afraid of your blood haul. Do you think I'll care about a mere rule? You don't believe me when I say you're stupid. Madman sneered. The people of the blood hall immediately became restless. With what Qin Feiyong and the madman had done over the years, they might really take out their sovereign weapons and kill them. Old Hai's eyes couldn't help but darken. He looked at the little rabbit and asked, "Do the rules you set still count?" The little rabbit glanced at the madman and then at Old Hai. Uncle Rabbit's words naturally count. Old Hai let out a sigh of relief. The little rabbit looked at the madman and said, "Don't break the rules. Otherwise, don't say that Uncle Rabbit didn't give you face." "Since Uncle Rabbit said so, what else can I do?" The madman grinned. To be honest, the madman really didn't care about the rules. With his personality, if he really angered the little rabbit, it would be useless even if he had it. At most, he would just have one more enemy. What was there to be afraid of? Of course, it hadn't reached that point yet, so there was no need to go against the little rabbit. Enough. The first battle is over. Let's continue. The little rabbit said indifferently and continued to drink. Madman Imo, good job. I suddenly realized that you're quite pleasing to the eye. Let's be friends. The core disciples of the demon hall surrounded the madman. Do I need you to be pleasing to the eye? The madman didn't buy it. Weren't they just a bunch of people with decent talent? Who were they putting on an arrogant attitude for? The disciples' faces darkened. They were really getting carried away. Madman Imo, do you dare to accept my challenge? On the other side, the purple-clothed youth from the blood hall shouted, I told you to go play in the mud. Don't you understand? The madman frowned. The purple-clothed youth chuckled and said mockingly, I think you don't dare. I don't dare? The madman raised his eyebrows. Yeah, I think you can only train your mouth. What a joke. You don't even dare to accept the challenge of a mere half-step sovereign? Is this what a disciple of the demon hall is like? I think it's time for the overlord of the eastern continent to change. The purple-clothed youth smiled. Half-step sovereign? The madman was stunned. Qin Feiyong was also surprised. Previously, they really didn't pay attention to the cultivation of the purple-clothed youth. This included the others. Because they were all amused by the madman and didn't pay attention to the strength of the purple-clothed youth. But now that they looked carefully, he really was a half-step sovereign. A half-step sovereign also came to join in the fun? Senior brother, you can't be careless. Qin Feiyong walked to the madman's side and whispered, What do you mean? The madman was suspicious. A half-step sovereign came to participate in the exchange conference and kept shouting, There's only one possibility. He definitely has something to rely on. Qin Feiyong messaged. That's true. The madman nodded. Are you coming or not? Qin Feiyong, why don't you come? The purple-clothed youth looked at Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong smiled but didn't say anything. Haha. So it's just 2 idiots. The purple-clothed youth shook his head and laughed. The other core disciples of the blood hall couldn't help but laugh. I'll fight with you. Suddenly, a black-clothed youth walked out from the group of core disciples and locked his gaze on the purple-clothed youth. You. The purple-clothed youth glanced at the black-clothed youth and shook his head. I'm not interested in you. You don't dare. The black-clothed youth sneered. You have the nerve to say this? A low-stage sovereign challenging a half-step sovereign. Can you be any more shameless? The purple-clothed youth had a mocking expression. Hearing this, the black-clothed youth's expression froze. The purple-clothed youth ignored the black-clothed youth and looked at Qin Feiyong and the madman. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I came to participate in the exchange conference because of you two. Because of us. Qin Feiyong was stunned. I heard that you two are very powerful in the eastern continent, so I wanted to see just how powerful you two are. But now that I see it, it's really not as good as the rumors. The purple-clothed youth shook his head. At this moment, no one from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, the Sky Hall, or the Divine Hall stepped out to challenge them. They were all looking at Qin Feiyong and the madman with a playful expression. This was because the big shots of the various forces all knew clearly that the reason the Blood Hall had organized this exchange conference was to deal with Qin Feiyong and Madman. At the same time, the Sky Hall and the Divine Hall's leaders were also interested in Qin Feiyong and the madman. So they were all waiting to watch the show. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Elder Hu looked at Qin Feiyong and the madman and said, "Come back. Let's go." Qin Feiyong pulled the madman and turned around to leave. Qin Feiyong, madman mo, if you two don't agree, then I'll chop off one of the Sword Emperor's arms first. But at this moment, a sinister laugh suddenly sounded in their minds. What? The two of them stiffened and turned to look at Elder Hai at the same time because the person who sent them the voice transmission was Elder Hai. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. The Sword Emperor is in my spatial divine item. If I want to kill him, it'll be as easy as crushing an ant. Elder Hai thought. When Qin Feiyong and the madman heard this, killing intent surged in their eyes and they couldn't help but clench their fists. What's going on? Chu Yun looked at Qin Feiyong and the madman in surprise. There's a problem. Elder Hu looked at the two of them, then looked at Elder Hai and thought, it must be this old thing secretly threatening them. When Chu Yun heard this, she immediately stepped forward and stopped Qin Feiyong and the madman. She transmitted her voice, don't be rash. If you two agree now, even if you defeat them, they will still continue to challenge you. Qin Feiyong and the madman looked at each other. Trust me, I'll help you. Chu Yun thought. Sure, the Sword Emperor is an Elder Hai's spatial divine item. Help us rescue him now. The madman transmitted his voice. It's inside his spatial divine object? Chu Yun was stunned. That's right. He just said it himself. The madman said. This? Chu Yun hesitated. We can't do it, right? So we have to rely on ourselves. And right now we have no choice. The madman took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feiyong with a smile. Do you want to go first or should I? Up to you. Qin Feiyong shrugged his shoulders. Then I'll go first. The madman chuckled and took a step forward and landed in the sky above the sea on the left. He accepted the challenge. The eyes of the powerhouses of the various forces lit up. The core disciples below also had expressions of anticipation. What kind of method would this person use? Feiyu, don't show mercy. Let him know the power of our Blood Hall. That's right. Torture him well and let him experience a life worse than death. The core disciples of the Blood Hall looked at the purple-clothed youth and roared at the same time. Don't worry. I'll let him deeply understand the power of our Blood Hall. The purple-clothed youth smiled proudly, then took a step forward and walked over to the madman. Sigh. Elder Huar and Chu Yun looked at each other and couldn't help but sigh. They had already expected that the Blood Hall would force the two of them to make a move, but they didn't expect it to come so quickly. They really couldn't wait to deal with the two of them on the first day. Chapter 32-29. The purple-clothed youth landed in front of Madman and smiled. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jiang Feiyu, the #1 genius of the Blood Hall. Madman was stunned. Why was it another self-proclaimed monstrous genius? Were all the youths of the Sky Cloud domain so self-righteous? Did I say anything when I grasped 6 types of law force? What about you? I don't believe you don't have a name. Jiang Feiyu looked at Madman. Are you here to fight? Or to make friends? Did you come to the wrong place? Madman was speechless. Jiang Feiyu was stunned and nodded. Alright, since you're going to die soon, your name isn't important. Say it, are we going to stop here or fight to the death? I really don't know where you find your confidence from. Madman had a helpless expression. He had never seen such an arrogant person, especially in front of him. Confidence comes from strength. Hurry up, are we going to stop here or fight to the death? Jiang Feiyu said. What do you think? Madman chuckled. Seems like we have the same idea, fight to the death. Jiang Feiyu chuckled. Laugh to your heart's content because you won't be able to laugh soon. Madman bared his teeth. Haha, Jiang Feiyu raised his head and laughed, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. A battle between half-step sovereigns. I hope it'll be interesting. The little rabbit muttered and then shouted, "Since we've already decided to fight to the death, then bystanders are not allowed to interfere. Let's begin." "Right, little crazy brat, have that crow on your shoulder leave the battlefield." The crow that the fire Luan transformed into had been lying on Madman's shoulder. It had the cultivation of a perfect sovereign. If it suddenly attacked Zhang Feiyu when Madman and Zhang Feiyu were fighting, would there be any meaning in continuing the battle? Because it would be an instant kill. "Go!" Madman patted the fire Luan's head. The fire Luan immediately spread its wings and turned into a stream of light that landed on Qin Feiyang's shoulder. "Then let's begin." Killing intent flashed in Zhang Feiyu's eyes. Boom! At almost the same time, the auras released by the two collided like two invisible dragons. Woo-woo! A gust of wind suddenly blew in the void here, and a destructive wave surged in all directions with an earth-shattering force. The madman's gaze turned cold, and he said, "Divine arts, divine artifacts, don't use these fancy things. Just directly activate the energy of the laws." "As you wish. Open your eyes wide and see what a real monster is." Zhang Feiyu's arrogance shot through the sky. A wave of heavenly thunder rolled out and turned into a 10,000-meter-long thunder dragon. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards the madman. "Law of lightning?" The madman was slightly taken aback. His body trembled as he also released a 10,000-foot-long lightning dragon. Ding! Accompanied by a series of dragon roars, the two lightning dragons collided with a loud bang, and all directions were destroyed. "You dare to take out a mere third profound thunder's fury?" The madman smiled savagely and pointed at the sky. Tribulation clouds gathered, and in an instant, the sky above turned into lightning. He shouted, "Fourth profound, 9 heavens divine thunder." Crack! Following a series of deafening booms, countless bolts of lightning flashed, and a destructive aura enveloped an area of tens of millions of miles. "Haha! I didn't expect that not only did you comprehend the law of lightning, but you've also comprehended the fourth profound." Zhang Feiyu laughed loudly. With the point of his index finger, more tribulation clouds gathered in the sky. It was also the fourth profound. At this moment, the 9 heavens divine thunder summoned by the two madly collided in the sky, killing each other. Could the fifth profound that this person grasped also be the law of lightning? Qin Feiyang looked at the sky, his eyes flickering. If that was the case, then there was no suspense in this battle. Because the madman also grasped the law of death. Unless the other party also grasped an ultimate law like the law of death, no matter how hard they tried, they wouldn't be a match for the madman. The two profound collided, and they were almost evenly matched. After all, with the same cultivation and same profound, it was hard to tell who was better. Just when everyone thought that the two would activate their fifth profound, Zhang Feiyu waved his hand, and a monstrous killing intent appeared. Law of slaughter. What does this mean? Why did he activate the law of slaughter? Could it be that the fifth profound he grasped isn't the law of lightning, but the law of slaughter? Everyone was suspicious. "My talent can't be compared to yours." Zhang Feiyu looked at the madman with contempt and shouted, "For profound, come out for me." The first profound sort of slaughter, the second profound sort of slaughter, the third profound killing intent domain, the fourth profound 10,000 dragons god slaying. The four profound meanings had all appeared. This sea area was directly shrouded by the killing intent of the four profound, as if it had turned into an azura hell. Especially the fourth profound, 10,000 blood dragons roared in the sky, and one could vaguely see a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. "Kill!" Zhang Feiyu waved his hand, and the four profound suddenly turned into a torrent that charged at the madman. Looking at this scene, the madman wanted to laugh instead. This person played so many tricks just to show off his law of slaughter in front of everyone. Back in the Hall of the Exalted, Mu Ziyu also showed off in front of him, and now Zhang Feiyu did it again. He really couldn't understand what was there to show off. Since that was the case, then he might as well fulfill his wish. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of thunder, the madman still used the four profound of the law of lightning. "Is that all you've got?" Zhang Feiyu was stunned. "I don't like to do these useless things. If you want to perform, then perform." The madman raised the corner of his mouth with a hint of mockery. But Zhang Feiyu didn't care at all. Boom! The 4 profound divine abilities collided, and it ended in a draw again. How boring. I thought you had a lot of law of slaughter. Zhang Feiyu shook his head in disappointment. Continue. The madman took a step back and simply put his hands behind his back, watching this person perform. Your attitude really pisses me off. Zhang Feiyu raised his eyebrows, and a wave of law of slaughter surged out. This was the law of sword. The law of lightning, the law of slaughter, the law of sword. These 3 laws were all comprehended by Feiyu when he was in the imperishable stage. His talent can be said to be number 1 in the history of our blood hall. A mere madman Mo is simply an ant-like existence in front of him. The core disciples of the blood hall couldn't help but mock. Comprehending 3 laws at the imperishable stage gives him the right to be arrogant? Fortunately, Mo Wuyuan and Mo Wuhui aren't here. Otherwise, they would definitely laugh their heads off. When the disciples of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance heard this, they couldn't help but secretly despise them. Although the vice leader colluded with the blood hall, the disciples below didn't know about it, so in the eyes of these disciples, they were more hostile towards the blood hall. Of course. As for the situation with Qin Feiyang and Mo Wuji, they didn't dare to say it in public. After all, the higher-ups had given them a strict order. Clang! Waves of sword qi enveloped all directions. However, Zhang Feiyu's law of sword had only activated the 3rd profound. In other words, his law of sword had only comprehended the 3rd profound. That's it? The madman looked at him in astonishment. Isn't that enough? Zhang Feiyu raised his eyebrows. 3 laws? I thought you had mastered 5 or 6 types of laws. What are you being so arrogant for? If you're considered a monstrous genius, then our demon hall, no. The entire Eastern continent, everyone is a monstrous genius. The madman was speechless. That's right. What's there to be proud of with just 3 laws? Apart from the blood hall, the people from the other forces had a disdainful look on their faces. Is that really the only thing? However, Qin Feiyang revealed a suspicious look. This was because he had been observing the core disciples of the blood hall. These people's expressions revealed their absolute confidence in Zhang Feiyu. If that was the case, they definitely wouldn't trust Zhang Feiyu so much. Moreover, such talent wasn't enough to be called the number 1 core disciple of the blood hall. This person should be hiding other laws. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Feiyu stared at the madman, but he wasn't angry. On the contrary, the mockery on his face became thicker. Crack! Clang! The 4 profound meanings of the law of slaughter and the law of thunder appeared one after another. In addition to the 3 profound meanings of the law of sword, they immediately attacked the madman. The madman dodged again and again. It seemed very intense, but it didn't cause any damage to the madman at all. All the profound abilities blasted into the sea below. Have you performed yet? The madman stopped in the void, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and looked at Zhang Feiyu with a playful look. Haha, Zhang Feiyu raised his head and laughed again. That contemptuous look was as if he was looking at a clown. Are you addicted to laughing? The madman began to feel annoyed. What a hateful face. I'll definitely beat him up later. If that's all, can I be called the number 1 core disciple of the blood hall? Kid, I will let you broaden your horizons now. Zhang Feiyu laughed arrogantly, and the power of 2 laws suddenly surged out. Law of war. And the other is what? This is. The madman's eyes trembled suddenly. The other law was black and gray, exuding a strong aura of death, as if the god of death had arrived. This is actually the law of death. The madman's face was full of disbelief. This person actually comprehended the law of death? At the same time, Qin Feiyang was also very surprised. This was really unexpected. Law of death, law of slaughter, law of war, law of thunder, law of sword. This Zhang Feiyu's talent was absolutely top-notch. This number 1 core disciple of the blood hall really wasn't bragging. At the same time, the giants and disciples of the various forces all had a look of shock on their faces. Not to mention the other 4 laws, just the law of death was one of the strongest laws. In the Sky Cloud realm there was a saying, anyone who comprehended the strongest law, even if it was only one kind of law, as long as they didn't die prematurely, they would definitely become an overlord of the Sky Cloud realm in the future. Just like the giants of the various super forces, they each mastered one kind of law. This was also the reason why the Rogue Cultivator Alliance attached so much importance to Qin Feiyang and the Madman. They really didn't expect that the Blood Hall would give birth to such a terrifying monster. Chapter 3230. Haha, are you scared? Compared to me, who do you think you are? Zhang Feiyu laughed arrogantly, as if he had lost his sense of measure. I'm sure it's okay. Madman nodded. What? Just okay? Kid, you don't know what you're capable of. How dare you say such words? Zhang Feiyu looked at Madman with contempt. Are you really stupid? This is a battle, not a competition of talent. Can you win just by comparing talent? If you want to win, it depends on your strength. Madman despised. Strength? The fourth profound of the law of slaughter, the third profound of the law of sword, the third profound of the law of war, the second profound of the law of death, the law of thunder, the fifth profound, and you dare to talk about strength with me? Is my strength not enough? Haha, Zhang Feiyu laughed. The law of death is only the second profound? Madman was stunned. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. It was only the second profound. What qualifications did he have to be arrogant? One must know that Madman had already comprehended the fourth profound. Zhang Feiyu's talent was indeed 1 in a million in the Sky Cloud realm, and he indeed had the qualifications to be arrogant. However, he had found the wrong opponent. There were so many genius disciples from various forces, and he didn't pick anyone but Madman. Wasn't this asking for humiliation? Still not convinced? Zhang Feiyu looked at Madman, and the ridicule on his face became thicker. I'm convinced. Madman nodded. Then kneel down and beg for mercy, and I will spare your life. Zhang Feiyu laughed proudly. Madman looked at him in shock and laughed. I think you misunderstood me. When I said I was convinced by your pretentious behavior, not your strength. Zhang Feiyu raised his eyebrows and sneered. Pretending to be calm, what's the point? I'm pretending to be calm? Madman was angry and wanted to laugh. This person really had a lot of talent, but he didn't have a brain at all. In fact, people like Zhang Feiyu weren't stupid. It was just that because his talent was too good, he was often pursued and praised, which led to his arrogant personality. He didn't put anyone in his eyes and felt that he was invincible. This was a typical dandy. In their eyes, other than themselves, everyone else was trash. Whoosh! Suddenly, Madman turned to look at Old C. The disdain in Old High's eyes was undisguised. Old Dog High, you're actually willing to let such a genius participate in the exchange. Aren't you afraid that he'll die halfway? The Madman looked at him playfully. Do you have the ability? Old High sneered. Haha, Madman couldn't help but raise his head and laugh when he heard this. Qin Feiyang looked at Elder Huo and asked, losing such a monstrous genius should be a great loss for the Blood Hall, right? Of course. Elder Huo nodded and smiled. He naturally understood what Qin Feiyang and the Madman meant. They wanted to kill Zhang Feiyu while he was still in the cradle. He couldn't help but look forward to it. When Zhang Feiyu died in the hands of a lunatic, what kind of expression would the group of people from the Blood Hall show? Hearing Madman's unbridled laughter, Old High's eyes flashed with killing intent. He then glanced at Zhang Feiyu. Zhang Feiyu understood. Boom! The law of lightning roared out. In this place, only I have the right to laugh. Zhang Feiyu took a step forward. The tribulation clouds in the sky rumbled and formed a huge lightning pool. In the middle of the lightning pool, a strand of lightning energy floated. Although it looked inconspicuous, it emitted an aura that could destroy the world. This was because this was the fifth profundity of the law of lightning, thunderclap. Kneel and tremble before me. Zhang Feiyu roared. It was as if he had changed into a different person. His killing intent soared into the sky. As he waved his hand, the lightning fell at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. The one who should kneel and tremble is you. A bloody light flickered in the Madman's eyes. The murderous aura that was hidden in his body was released without reservation. At this moment he was like a demon king that had descended into the world. This was his true side. Displaying such a scene also meant that he had already developed the intention to kill. Crack! Boom! He pointed at the sky, and the lightning pool appeared one after another. It's also the fifth profundity of the law of lightning. Both their first and fifth profundities are the law of lightning. Seems that they are quite fated. Someone laughed in surprise. Boom! The two profundities collided, and the world was instantly enveloped by heavenly might. At this moment they were like two gods of lightning. They constantly collided, causing the void to collapse and the sea to churn. The sky was filled with the power of lightning. I didn't expect that your first and fifth profundity would also be the law of lightning. However, I still have other laws. Zhang Feiyu sneered. The law of slaughter roared out, turning into tens of thousands of blood dragons that charged toward the madman. Monstrous killing intent filled the air. Don't be too surprised because there are still many things that you can't imagine. The madman cackled. His eyes seemed to be soaked in blood, as if there was a sea of corpses floating within. Boom! In the next moment, he had also activated the fourth profundity of the law of slaughter. Tens of thousands of blood dragons roared in the sky and charged toward the other party. Immediately, the void above became the battlefield of the blood dragons. 20,000 blood dragons crazily pounced toward the other party, their roars shaking the sky. Zhang Feiyu frowned and roared. Sword domain. Tens of thousands of sword chi appeared, turning into a huge domain that enveloped the madman. This was the third profundity of the law of sword. Radiant sacred sword. The madman laughed. The law of light appeared, turning into a sacred sword that slashed toward the sword domain. What? The third profundity of the law of light. Zhang Feiyu was stunned. The core disciples of the Blood Hall were also very surprised. Up until now, this person had already displayed 3 laws. And the profundities weren't low. The law of lightning, the 5th profundity. The law of slaughter, the 4th profundity. The law of light, the 3rd profundity. At this moment, this person's strength didn't seem to be weaker than Zhang Feiyu. Don't worry, Feiyu also has the law of death and the law of war. I don't believe that he also has 5 laws. Someone said. That's true. I heard that this person was only at the imperishable realm when he fought with the grandson of the Deputy Alliance leader of the Wandering Cultivator Alliance. Clearly, he just broke through to half-step ruler not long ago. For such a person, mastering 3 laws is already his limit. The others also expressed their opinions. Is that really the case? Qin Feiyong glanced at the Blood Hall's side, and a trace of ridicule crept up his eyes. If they really thought of the madman that way, they wouldn't even know how they died. Moreover, the law of light was the weakest of all the laws that the madman had grasped. This was because he had comprehended the law of light in the end. However, in recent years, the madman and Qin Feiyong often got together to discuss the power of laws, including the law of light. Coupled with the 1 day, 1,000 years time array, the madman had easily comprehended the 3rd profundity, radiant sacred sword. However, the law of light wasn't the main point. The main point was the madman's law of death. One was the 4th profundity while the other was the 2nd. The difference was like heaven and earth. Yet, Zhang Feiyu and the Blood Hall's people were still complacent. What a joke. Not bad, not bad, 3 laws. You can be considered a moldable talent. Unfortunately, your opponent today is me. Zhang Feiyu laughed loudly. Boom! He activated the law of war, and a monstrous battle intent surged. Immediately after, he activated the law of death. A wave of death energy surged out like a giant wave and rushed toward madman. Yes, you can be considered a moldable talent. Unfortunately, you met me. In terms of talent, you're not even 1/10 of me. What are you being so arrogant for? The madman shouted. The law of war and law of death were instantly activated. What? Zhang Feiyu froze on the spot. The Blood Hall's people, Treasury Elder Hai and the head deacon also had a look of disbelief. Even the core disciples of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, Sky Hall, Deity Hall, and Devil Hall were dumbfounded as they looked at the madman. This person had actually grasped the law of war and law of death. What was going on? They had never heard of such a situation before. There were no less than 400 to 500 people present. Among so many people, only Qin Feiyong, Elder Hua, Chu Yun, Black Dragon, Fire Dragon, and Fire Luan were relatively calm, because they all knew. As for the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, they only knew about the madman's other identity, Mo Wuhue. Interesting, interesting. Even the little rabbit perked up and watched the madman's battle. Boom! The 2 powers of death collided and Zhang Feiyu's power of death was annihilated on the spot. Then, The madman's power of death did not stop and continued to attack Zhang Feiyu. After all, their levels were different. The madman had already comprehended the fourth profundity, while Zhang Feiyu had only comprehended the second profundity. The power of the madman's power of death was naturally stronger than Zhang Feiyu's. This is impossible. Zhang Feiyu shook his head. He seemed to have suffered a huge blow, and did not even notice the power of death that was heading towards him. It was not hard to imagine. A person who was so arrogant, conceited, and complacent, who had regarded his opponent as an ant, only to suddenly discover that this ant was actually not inferior to him. This kind of feeling of disparity and defeat would be especially intense. Feiyu, watch out! Someone from the blood hall shouted. Zhang Feiyu shuddered and suddenly came back to his senses. Looking at the power of death that was already in front of him, he immediately broke out in cold sweat. Without hesitation, he activated the thunder armor. Boom! The power of death struck his body. Although he was protected by the thunder armor and the law of war, he was still sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood. His power of death can actually crush Zhang Feiyu's power of death. Could it be that his comprehension of the law of death is higher than Zhang Feiyu's? Finally, someone realized the important point. As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked and looked at the madman in surprise. Especially the people from the blood hall. The madman's power of death could crush Zhang Feiyu's power of death. It was obviously higher than Zhang Feiyu's. The situation was not good. Chapter 32-31. Impossible, this must be a dream. How can there be someone in the current generation who has comprehended the law of death like me, and has comprehended a higher level of profundity than me? I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Zhang Feiyu stared at the madman, his eyes turning red. To him this was a fatal blow. However, this blow did not come from his body, but from his mind and soul. The reason why he could look down on the current generation was because he had mastered the law of death, but he never thought that there would be someone more outstanding than him. It was as if he had fallen from the clouds into a bottomless abyss. Now you know how ridiculous you are. The madman mocked mercilessly. Zhang Feiyu clenched his fists tightly, his nails digging into the flesh of his palms, and drops of blood flowed out from between his fingers. In this world there are many people who are stronger and more talented than you. What right do you have to be so arrogant? Today I will teach you a lesson. You must know how to keep a low profile, because you will never know how unfathomable your opponent is. The madman took a step forward, and the law of thunder, law of slaughter, law of death, law of light, and law of war were all activated. The only one that was not activated was the law of darkness. The power of the 5 laws turned into 5 giant dragons, roaring in the sky as they charged at Zhang Feiyu. Bastard, I will kill you. Zhang Feiyu was extremely ashamed and angry. With a roar, he also activated the 5 laws and pounced over like 5 giant pythons. Boom! In just an instant, the power of their laws collided with each other. The void here suddenly rumbled as the power of laws clashed all over the sky. In the end, Zhang Feiyu was still no match, and the giant pythons formed by the 5 laws were annihilated. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and roared, "You want to kill me? It's not that easy." Clang! Accompanied by a loud sound, a dazzling divine light appeared in front of him. It was a black longsword. Legendary grade heaven-defying artifact. Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted. The rules say that except for the sovereign grade weapon, all means can be used. Of course, heaven-defying artifacts are included. Die! Zhang Feiyu smiled sinisterly, and the black longsword instantly recovered. It carried a sharp edge that could destroy the world as it slashed at the madman. Looks like my identity is about to be exposed. Qin Feiyang mumbled. Since Zhang Feiyu had taken out a legendary divine artifact, the lunatic had to take out his divine artifact as well. If the power of law could be said to be a coincidence, then the divine artifact could not be explained. This was because the lunatic's legendary artifacts were all given to him by the Hall of Famers. As long as he took them out, he would be able to recognize them at a glance. You can't win with the power of law, so you're using a heaven-defying divine artifact? Haha, today I'll teach you a bloody lesson. Whether it's the power of law or the heaven-defying divine artifact, you're no match for me. The madman smiled proudly and with a wave of his hand, A 3-foot-long sword that was as white as jade appeared. The thin sword was only 2 fingers wide and as thin as a cicada's wing. It looked as if it was made of jade. And there was a white phoenix engraved on the sword hilt. When the thin sword appeared, Elder Hua was slightly stunned. Meanwhile, Qin Feiyong immediately looked at the vice leader and the Hall of Famers. However, to his surprise, after seeing the thin sword that the lunatic took out, their pupils shrank slightly, but they did not show any expression of shock. What's going on? You didn't recognize it? Qin Feiyong was a little dumbfounded. But how is this possible? The divine artifact was given to the lunatic by the Hall of Famers. As the original owner, how could he not recognize it? Feiyu, be careful. That's a supreme divine artifact. Suddenly, a cry of surprise sounded. What? Supreme level heaven-defying divine artifact. Qin Feiyong was stunned. He looked over and saw that the person who exclaimed was the Blood Hall's Grand Deacon. Since the Grand Deacon said it, it must be true. However, wasn't the divine artifact given to the lunatic by the Hall of Famers a legendary divine artifact? How did it become a supreme divine artifact? Supreme divine artifact? Zhang Feiyu, who was charging towards the lunatic, heard this and his body trembled. He quickly stopped. But at the same time, the lunatic laughed and grabbed the thin sword. He instantly recovered and slashed at the black sword. Accompanied by a loud clang, the black sword broke on the spot. What's going on? Qin Feiyong looked at this scene in astonishment. Could it be that the lunatic was hiding something from him? Could it be that the Hall of Famers gave him a supreme divine artifact? However, how could he explain the Hall of Famers' reaction? Why is the white phoenix divine sword in his hands? Suddenly, a voice was transmitted to Qin Feiyong's ears. White phoenix divine sword. Qin Feiyong was stunned. He quickly turned to look at Elder Hua because the person who was muttering to himself was Elder Hua. That's right. This sword is called the White Phoenix Divine Sword. It's a supreme divine artifact. However, this is a gift I gave to Fire Lotus. How did it end up in the hands of the lunatic? Elder Hua frowned. What? You gave this to Fire Lotus? Qin Feiyong looked at him in astonishment. That's right. She's my disciple now. Naturally, I have to give her a divine artifact to protect herself. Is there a problem? Elder Hua asked. No problem. Qin Feiyong hurriedly shook his head. So that's how it is. When the lunatic first entered the Black Tortoise world, he must have found out that Elder Hua gave the Fire Lotus a supreme divine artifact. Out of greed, he tricked the Fire Lotus into giving it to him. Awesome! Elder Hua was really generous with his supreme-grade heaven-defying artifact. The Demonic Hall's foundation was indeed stronger than the Rogue Cultivator alliances. No wonder the Hall of Famers didn't have any reaction. It turned out that this wasn't the divine artifact he gave to the lunatic. As for Qin Feiyong himself, the Hall of Famers gave the lunatic 2 divine artifacts. Qin Feiyong had seen the armor before. However, Qin Feiyong didn't know what the weapon was. Therefore, when he saw the White Phoenix Divine Sword, he naturally thought that it was the weapon the Hall of Famers gave him. It's broken just like that? Zhang Feiyu looked at the black longsword in his hand. His face was filled with shock. Not only was the power of law stronger than his, but even the supreme divine artifact was stronger than his. Suddenly, he raised his head and stared at the lunatic. He roared in exasperation. You actually used a supreme divine artifact. You're too despicable. Despicable? The lunatic's mouth twitched. You're allowed to use a supreme divine artifact, but others aren't allowed to use it? Before I took out the White Phoenix Divine Sword, you were already so fierce. Now that I took out an even stronger supreme divine artifact, you're saying I'm despicable? What kind of fucking logic is this? When the people of the various factions heard Zhang Feiyu's words, they couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. Although his talent was good, his mind was still immature. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a childish thing. In comparison, this lunatic was more outstanding. Whether it was talent or mentality, Zhang Feiyu couldn't compare to him. This was the difference between growing up in a greenhouse and growing up in the outside world through countless tribulations. Although the flowers in the greenhouse were beautiful, they couldn't withstand the ravages of wind and frost. Old High Grand Deacon, quickly save Feiyu. A young man stood out and anxiously called out to Old High and Grand Deacon. Old High and Grand Deacon looked at each other and couldn't help but glance at the little rabbit on Sky Cloud Island. If we don't save Feiyu, he'll die. The young man was burning with anxiety. Battlefield. The White Phoenix divine sword in the lunatic's hand had already recovered to its peak state. The leaders of the various factions all activated their power of law and condensed barriers to protect their respective islands. On the other side, Jiang Feiyu's face was already pale as he stood there trembling. It was obvious that he was in despair. You're scared already? Bring out the arrogance that you had at the beginning. The lunatic looked at him with contempt. No, don't kill me. I beg you, let me go. Jiang Feiyu murmured. In the end, he knelt in the void powerlessly. He's kneeling. Where's his dignity? He's still a core disciple of the Blood Hall. The various factions couldn't help but look at Jiang Feiyu in shock. It was just as Madman Mo said. He had nothing but talent. Even Old High and Grand Deacon couldn't help but frown. Not only had he lost this battle, but he had also humiliated the Blood Hall. The dignified number 1 core disciple of the Blood Hall actually knelt and begged for mercy. When the exchange conference ended, this matter would definitely become a joke in the 4 continents. Feiyu, what are you doing? Stand up for me. The young man who had asked Old High and Grand Deacon for help looked at Jiang Feiyu angrily and roared. Qin Feiyang looked at the young man suspiciously. This person seemed to be particularly concerned about Jiang Feiyu. Could it be that they were related? However, Jiang Feiyu turned a deaf ear to him. Like a pitiful worm, he looked at the lunatic helplessly. Even if you die, you have to die with dignity. The young man roared again. However, Jiang Feiyu still ignored him. He looked at the lunatic and said, I beg you, let me go. Just treat me as a dog. What kind of mentality is this? In order to survive, he can even say such words. It seems that our core disciples have to be sharpened in the future, lest they make such a shameful scene. The leaders of the various factions shook their heads. The lunatic looked at Jiang Feiyu with a trace of pity in his eyes. This person was indeed a talent. Unfortunately, he was born in a greenhouse and didn't have any ability to resist pressure. He didn't even have the most basic courage. Old Dog High, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame yourselves. Such a good seed was actually raised like this by you. This is the biggest joke in the world. The lunatic looked at Old High and mocked him mercilessly. Then he waved the White Phoenix divine sword. Feiyu, pull yourself together. This is my supreme great heaven-defying artifact. Quickly catch it. Believe in yourself, you can do it. Seeing this, the young man immediately took out a flaming long blade and threw it at Jiang Feiyu. When Jiang Feiyu heard this, a trace of hope appeared in his dim eyes. Then he leaped and grabbed the flaming long blade. Chapter 32-32. Madman raised his eyebrows. Qin Feiyang, Elder Hua, Chu Yun, and the 100 or so disciples of the Demon Hall all revealed angry expressions. Didn't they say that no one was allowed to interfere in the battle of life and death? It seems that you really don't care about Uncle Rabbit. At this moment, a bone-chilling voice sounded. The little rabbit held the wine jar and suddenly stood up. With a step, it instantly appeared in front of the flaming saber and grabbed it. Give it to me. Seeing this, Jiang Feiyu roared with red eyes. This was his only life-saving straw. Scram! The little rabbit roared and its voice turned into a sound wave that directly blasted Jiang Feiyu away. His body was torn into pieces. This was undoubtedly adding fuel to the fire for Jiang Feiyu, because he was already seriously injured before, and now he was blasted away by the little rabbit. Although it was only a sound wave, its lethality was no weaker than a heaven-defying divine artifact. You still want to jump around? Go to hell. At the same time, Madman also charged over with the White Phoenix divine sword. The White Phoenix divine sword shone brightly. When the sword fell, accompanied by a shrill scream, Jiang Feiyu's soul was annihilated on the spot. Feiyu, the young man roared with pain and despair in his eyes. The others of the Blood Hall also stared at Madman with gloomy faces. As for the people of the other forces, they couldn't help but shake their heads in pity. Jiang Feiyu was really a talent. Unfortunately, as Madman said, he was delayed by the Blood Hall. Otherwise, he would definitely become an overlord of the Sky Cloud realm in the future. What a pity! And this lesson also told them that the more talented a disciple was, the more they couldn't be nurtured in a greenhouse. Because their future path was longer than others, they needed to be sent out to temper themselves. There was a saying that a jade wouldn't become a treasure if it wasn't polished. No matter how good a jade was, if it wasn't polished, it wouldn't be able to reflect its value. Everyone was regretting Zhang Feiyu's death, but the little rabbit stared at the young man with murderous intent in its eyes. The Grand Deacon was the first to react. He hurriedly stood in front of the young man and looked at the little rabbit with some respect. Please show mercy. Rules are rules. The little rabbit was expressionless. Immediately, everyone looked at Little Rabbit and Blood Hall. Apart from Qin Feiyang, everyone else revealed a look of schadenfreude. The disciples below didn't know the little rabbit's identity, but the various big shots were very clear in their hearts. Don't look at how cute the little rabbit was. In reality, it was an extremely terrifying existence. Furthermore, it was still the referee. As a referee, he had to do things impartially. Moreover, it wasn't afraid of offending anyone. Even if it was a core disciple of the Blood Hall, it wouldn't care if it killed him. Who? Old Hai took a deep breath and looked at the little rabbit. I guarantee that there won't be a next time. Then, he looked at the young man and shouted, Zhang Feitian, apologized to it immediately. Zhang Feitian? Zhang Feiyu. This name, so they are brothers. No wonder you care so much about him. Qin Feiyang nodded. Since they were blood-related brothers, it was likely that things were not over yet. Zhang Feitian kept looking at the place where Zhang Feiyu died, as if he didn't hear Old Hai's voice. His eyes were filled with sorrow and hatred. Zhang Feitian. The Grand Deacon also shouted. Only then did Zhang Feitian retract his gaze. He glanced gloomily at Frenzy and looked at the little rabbit. I didn't intervene in their battle. I only gave my brother a divine artifact. Is that considered breaking the rules? Still quibbling. The little rabbit clenched its paw and the supreme-level divine artifact, the flaming saber, was directly crushed into pieces. What a waste! That's a supreme-level divine artifact. Seeing this scene, countless people felt their hearts ache. A supreme-level divine artifact was the strongest existence below a sovereign-level divine artifact. Just like the Rogue Cultivators Alliance, even the Deputy Alliance leader and Hall of Famers couldn't take out a second supreme-level divine artifact. But now, this little rabbit actually destroyed a supreme-grade heaven-defying divine artifact without a second word. That's right. It was destroyed, not damaged. It could be repaired if it was damaged, but if it was destroyed, it would be completely gone. Ahem. Frenzy coughed dryly and came to the little rabbit's side. He said with a bitter face, Uncle Rabbit, you can give it to me if you don't want it. Doesn't Zhang Feiyu have a legendary-level divine artifact? The little rabbit said without turning its head. That's right. Frenzy slapped his head and then said in distress, how can a legendary-level divine artifact be better than a supreme-level divine artifact? Hearing this, the little rabbit raised its eyebrows. It clawed at the air, and the broken black sword that fell into the sea below instantly flew in front of it like lightning. You don't want it, right? Fine, I'll just destroy it. The little rabbit bared its teeth. Don't. Frenzy hurriedly waved his hand and ran over with a flattering smile. Uncle Rabbit, please have mercy. The little rabbit rolled its eyes at him and threw the broken black sword to Frenzy. Thank you, Uncle Rabbit. Frenzy smiled and sized up the black sword. He found that there was a demonic dragon engraved on the sword. This sword was about 3 feet long and 3 fingers wide. The blade emitted a faint light. When Frenzy dripped his blood to recognize it as its master, a message immediately entered his head. Legendary-level divine artifact, Demon Dragon Sword. It's not bad. Frenzy nodded and threw the black sword to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang caught it and directly sent it to the Black Tortoise world. The Demon Dragon Sword also had a spirit, but he didn't dare to be presumptuous now. A little rabbit was enough to intimidate him, not to mention Elder Hua and Chu Yuan. If it was chased away, Qin Feiyang and Frenzy would definitely not hesitate to let Elder Hua destroy it. However, as long as it entered the Black Tortoise world, there was no need to be afraid of it running away. Frenzy glanced at Zhang Feitian and asked in a low voice, Uncle Rabbit, what do you plan to do with him? Do it according to the rules. Die. The little rabbit said coldly. It looked at Elder Hai and the head deacon and said, do you want to do it? Or do you want Uncle Rabbit to do it myself? Frenzy immediately looked at the two of them playfully. The head deacon frowned and looked at the little rabbit apologetically. I'm really sorry this time. Please give him another chance. After all, Zhang Feiyu is his biological brother. It's understandable that he was impulsive. Understandable? Frenzy laughed and coldly snorted. Ask the people here, who doesn't have a few friends? If they were all like him, would the rules still be the rules? They're not friends, they're brothers. The head deacon said in a deep voice. So what if they're brothers? Look at me and old Qin. Although we're not brothers, we're closer than brothers. According to what you said, when the two of us are fighting, the other can also run over to help. Frenzy sneered. Madman Mo, if you have the guts, don't hide behind it. Come out and fight with me. Zhang Feitian glared at Frenzy and roared. We're all about to die. Do I need to waste time with you? Frenzy looked down on him. You, Zhang Feitian spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes filled with anger. Ouch. You're spitting out blood. Your body is too weak. Why didn't you rest at home? Why did you come here to join in the fun? Frenzy looked at him with a concerned look. I'll kill you. Zhang Feitian roared. Shut up. The head deacon coldly shouted and grabbed Zhang Feitian, directly pressing him down to kneel on the ground. Then the head deacon looked at Little Rabbit and said in a deep voice, he's already kneeling. Can't you give him a chance? Uncle Rabbit, don't be soft-hearted. Kneeling down will be enough? If you continue to say that, you'll have to kowtow a few times and call him ancestor before you forgive him. Frenzy laughed sinisterly. This kid isn't honest. He's just thinking of humiliating others. The people from various forces shook their heads. This guy was definitely worthy of the word shameless. Frenzy, don't go too far. The head deacon stared at Frenzy with a hint of killing intent in his eyes. Too far? Frenzy laughed and shook his head. I really don't know. How can you still have the face to say that I'm too far? Who was it that chased after me and old Qin? And even used the three rulers' divine weapons multiple times? And who was it that used despicable means to force us to participate in the conference? The head deacon fell silent. You have nothing to say now? The Great Blood Hall spent so much effort to deal with me and old Qin. They really think highly of us. Didn't you want to kill us? You should have brought the ruler's divine weapons with you, right? Heavenly Dragon God Sword, Ice Dragon Sacred Sword, you two bastards, get out here. Let's settle the old and new grudges today. Frenzy shouted without fear in his eyes. Heavenly Dragon God Sword? Ice Dragon Sacred Sword? Those are the names of the two rulers' divine weapons. The eyes of the leaders of various forces couldn't help but flicker. It seemed that Madman Mo and Qin Feiyang already had a deep grudge against the two rulers' divine weapons. But where did these two rulers' divine weapons come from? Why had they never heard of them before? Old Hai, the head deacon, and the Blood Hall's core disciples all had gloomy expressions in the face of Frenzy's clamor, because this was a blatant challenge to him. You don't dare to come out? Haha, it seems that you're just two cowards. But then again, when we were still half-step undying, you were almost destroyed by our hands, let alone now. Don't you think you're pitiful? You didn't do anything yourself, yet you went to borrow the Blood Hall's hand. The Blood Hall's people are so stupid that they're cute. They're actually willing to be used by you. Frenzy sneered as if there was no one else around. He was completely unrestrained. Bastard, I want to challenge you. Me too. If you have the guts, fight me. I guarantee that you'll regret provoking our Blood Hall. Don't be a coward. You're so arrogant. Even the ruler's divine weapon isn't your match. You think you're afraid of us low-level rulers? The Blood Hall's core disciples couldn't help but run out to fight. Idiot. Frenzy rolled his eyes at them, infuriating them. Chapter 32-33. However, the powerhouses of the various forces found it hard to calm down. Although Qin Feiyang's battle with the three Dominator divine weapons in the Sky Cloud Sea, other than Elder Hua and a few others, no one knew about it. But back then in the Wind Sea City, the Sky Dragon God Sword and Ice Dragon Sacred Sword came, and Qin Feiyang fought with them in the Star River. This was the best proof. It proved that these people indeed had the ability to fight against the Dominator divine weapon. Therefore, all the powerhouses believed what Madman had said before. And this was inconceivable. Almost destroying 2 Dominator divine weapons. Such a shocking feat was impossible even for them, the overlords of a region. How did these 2 brats do it? Moreover, a battle with a Dominator divine weapon would definitely cause a huge commotion. But why had they never heard of a battle between Dominator divine weapons all these years? Where exactly did Qin Feiyang and Madman come from? They were still so young, yet they already had a Dominator divine weapon. Could it be that there was still a hidden place in the Sky Cloud realm that the world did not know about? You damn madman, don't blindly argue. That's right, if you have the guts, fight us one-on-one. If I lose, I will kneel in front of you and call you grandfather in front of everyone. The core disciples of the Demon Palace were furious. They had never seen such a bastard. I don't have unfilial grandsons like you. Madman quickly waved his hand with a look of disdain. Bastard, I'm going to tear you apart. A young man beat his chest and stomped his feet as he roared. Even tearing your grandfather apart, you are indeed unfilial. Madman shook his head and sighed. Puff. The young man was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Haha, are all of you from the Blood Palace weak? Sigh, didn't grandfather often warn you not to be greedy for beauties? Don't be greedy for beauties. You just don't listen. Look now, the aftereffects are coming out. Madman's face was full of ridicule. The group of people gnashed their teeth, wishing that they could pull out Madman's tendons and skin him alive. All of you, shut up. The Grand Deacon couldn't stand it anymore. There were so many people here, but they were being played around by a little lunatic. Wasn't that embarrassing? The group of people fell silent, but their eyes were filled with anger as they looked at the madman. The Great Deacon looked at the little rabbit and cupped his hands, saying, "Give me a chance. I guarantee that he won't do it again. Otherwise, there's no need for you to do anything. I'll personally kill him in front of everyone." The little rabbit looked at Zhang Feitian. After a moment of silence, she nodded and said, "All right, but as the little lunatic said, you have to kowtow and apologize." The Grand Deacon clenched his fists and looked down at Zhang Feitian. Kowtow and apologize. Great Deacon. Zhang Feitian looked up at the Grand Deacon. I don't want to repeat myself. The Grand Deacon's gaze was gloomy. Zhang Feitian gritted his teeth and kowtowed 3 times. I'm sorry. That's more like it. The little rabbit sneered and returned to Sky Cloud Island with the jug in her hand. She said indifferently, "Let's continue." Zhang Feitian immediately stood up and looked at Madman aggressively. He shouted, "Do you dare to fight to the death?" Madman also put away the smile on his face and looked at Zhang Feitian. Elder Hu saw this and hurriedly sent a voice transmission. "Little lunatic, don't be rash. He's a lesser stage ruler and has grasped 3/5 intents." Chu Yun couldn't help but frown. On the other hand, Qin Feiyang looked at Madman with a pensive expression. He understood Madman's personality. He wouldn't do something he wasn't confident in. But now, facing Zhang Feitian, Madman actually had a feeling of eagerness? What was this fellow planning? "I'm asking you, do you dare?" Zhang Feitian roared. The aura of a lesser stage ruler erupted without any concealment. He was furious to the extreme. His younger brother's blood feud and all the humiliation today. He was going to return it all to Madman. 10 times, 100 times. "If you don't accept his challenge, I'll kill the Sword Emperor right now." Elder Hai's voice suddenly sounded in Madman's mind. "Shut up." Madman immediately looked at Elder Hai like an enraged lion and roared. "Apart from threatening us, what else can you do? Do you want me to stand here and let you kill me?" "What do you mean? Threaten?" Everyone was baffled by the madman's sudden outburst. But Qin Feiyang knew that Elder Hai must be secretly threatening Madman again. That damned old thing, he would make him pay the price sooner or later. Elder Hai's face sank when facing the gazes of various forces. Madman took a deep breath and looked at Elder Hai. "Old bastard, I can accept his challenge, but the premise is that you let the Sword Emperor and the others come out and let me take a look." Elder Hai was silent. If he really called the Sword Emperor and the others out, it would be tantamount to admitting that he was secretly threatening Qin Feiyang and Elder Hai. Although this was their personal grudge and the various forces wouldn't get involved, once this matter was confirmed, everyone would definitely point fingers at him behind his back. In the end, when this matter was spread out, the entire Sky Cloud realm would point fingers at the Blood Hall behind their backs. This time, Qin Feiyang said, "Who in the Sky Cloud realm doesn't know about your Blood Hall's conduct, so you don't need to worry about being talked about." Elder Hai gloomily looked at Qin Feiyang. "Old Man Hai, if you really want to use the Sword Emperor and the others to make Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo stand here and let you kill them, then my demon palace will sit by and watch. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. This old man has also brought the sovereign divine weapon of my demon palace. If you want to fight, then this old man will accompany you to the end." Elder Hu spoke, his tone revealing a shocking sharpness. Hearing this, the hearts of the various forces trembled. Accompany you to the end? It seems like the demon palace is determined to protect these two. That's right. Since this exchange is organized by your Blood Hall, then let's settle it in a fair and just way. Why don't we make a bet? Let's use the freedom of the Sword Emperor and the others as the wager. If my demon palace wins this exchange, then return the Sword Emperor and the others to Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo. If my demon palace loses to you in this exchange, then my demon palace will never interfere in the enmity between you and Qin Feiyang and the others. Chu Yun spoke as well, and this could be considered as an official declaration of war. Qin Feiyang was extremely moved when he heard this, and he turned to look at Elder Hua and the others before bowing and saying, "Thank you." Elder Hua waved his hand, and then he looked at Elder Hai and said, "Now that we've spoken so clearly, there shouldn't be any need to continue hiding, right? Call the Sword Emperor and the others out." Elder Hai glanced gloomily at Elder Hua and the others, and then he glanced at Qin Feiyang and the madman before he nodded and said, "All right, since we've already embarrassed ourselves to this extent, I'm not afraid of you mocking us." As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Hai waved his hand, and then a bloody figure instantly appeared at the side. That's right. He was the Sword Emperor. However, at this moment he was covered in wounds and extremely weak, and even standing there was wobbling. His former elegance was long gone. The current him was like an old man at the end of his life. Moreover, he was wearing a bracelet made of soul-sealing magic stone on both of his hands. Bastard! He's just a greater success imperishable realm cultivator. Moreover, his chi-si has already been destroyed by you. And he's wearing a bracelet made of soul-sealing magic stone. He no longer has the strength to fight back, and you're still torturing him like this? The madman and Qin Feiyang looked at the Sword Emperor's current appearance, and they instantly bared their teeth in anger, almost going crazy with hatred. Wait, isn't he the person in the portrait? So these portraits were used to threaten Qin Feiyang and the others. When the core disciples of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and the Demon Palace saw the Sword Emperor, they immediately understood what was going on. This was because they were all from the Eastern continent, and they knew about the appearance of the portraits. At first they were all baffled. Why would these portraits appear? Some even thought that it was purely a prank. Only now did they come to a realization. The portraits were spread by the Blood Palace. The purpose was to force Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo to participate in the exchange conference. This method was really despicable. As for the people of the Sky Palace and the Divine Palace, after hearing the discussion here, they could roughly guess some of it, and they couldn't help but show disdain for the Blood Palace. The dignified Blood Palace, the overlord of the Western continent, actually used such a despicable method? However, the actions of the Blood Palace also reflected another thing. Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo were not ordinary difficult to deal with. Otherwise, with the strength of the Blood Palace, they would never do such a thing. In other words, the Blood Palace would do such a thing because they really had no other choice. The giants of the Sky Palace and the Divine Palace were also more and more interested in Qin Feiyang and the madman. To be able to force the Blood Palace to this extent, one could imagine their ability. The Sword Emperor. When he first appeared, he looked a little confused. Where was this? Why were there so many people? But when the madman and Qin Feiyang's angry roars rang out, his expression froze. Why were there Feiyang and the little madman's voices? Was this a dream? He couldn't believe it. He didn't even dare to look up because he was afraid that when he looked up, he would find that everything was just his illusion. Looking at the Sword Emperor at this moment, Qin Feiyang and the madman felt heartache, and the anger in their hearts became more and more uncontrollable. Thinking back to when they were in the Divine Land, the Sword Emperor was such a high-spirited man. Even when facing the dragons he never retreated, but at this moment he became timid, completely like a timid child. It was hard to imagine what kind of life he had lived all these years, and how much torture he had experienced. Senior Sword Emperor. Qin Feiyang walked to the madman's side step by step and called out softly, as if he was afraid of scaring the Sword Emperor. What exactly did he experience to make a person with a strong fighting spirit become like this? Is it darkness? Darkness that can't see any light? Or despair? I can't find the slightest bit of hope. All that's left is despair. Even the right to die has been ruthlessly taken away. The madman clenched his hands, and the anger in his heart burned crazily. He suddenly roared, "Ice Dragon, you bastard! I swear that if I don't kill you in this life, I won't be human in the next life." His words were sad and angry, except for when he learned of his foster father's death. He had never wanted to kill a person like this. Chapter 32-34. If I don't kill you in this life, I won't be human in the next life. The madman's angry roar reverberated throughout the world for a long time. When the people from the various factions heard this, they couldn't help but be shocked. How much did he hate someone to make such an oath? Qin Feiyang couldn't help but turn to look at the madman. He could understand the madman's current mood. The madman was usually frivolous and never humble to his elders. In fact, according to the secular world, he was a person without manners. However, his heart was kind. Not humble and not polite didn't mean he didn't care. This was just his personality. He was a casual person. The better the relationship, the less humble he would be. As for the Sword Emperor, he actually didn't have much interaction with the madman. The madman cared so much about the Sword Emperor because of the Sword Emperor's sacrifice in the ancient realm. For the people of the ancient realm, the Sword Emperor had followed Qin Badian and Lu Zhongyang to fight against the dragons. He had never retreated or complained. Could be said that the reason the ancient realm could be where it was today was because these people had exchanged their lives and dignity. As a member of the ancient realm, the madman naturally respected these people from the bottom of his heart. Although he usually didn't show it, he had always been grateful. Whether it was the Sword Emperor Qin Badian, or those who had died in battle, they were all heroes of the ancient realm. Without them, there wouldn't be the ancient realm today. And now, the heroes who had once protected the billions of people in the ancient realm had fallen to such a state. How could the madman not be angry? Not to mention the madman who valued friendship and righteousness. Even a small figure in the ancient realm would be angry when he saw this scene. Wait. Did he say the words Ice Dragon just now? Suddenly someone asked. Only now did they notice the main point of the madman's oath. I think there was the words Ice Dragon. What's going on? The person who tortured the Sword Emperor was the Blood Hall. He made an oath to target the Blood Hall. Why did it become an Ice Dragon? Who is this Ice Dragon? Everyone discussed spiritedly, their eyes filled with suspicion. The core disciples of the Demon Hall were also discussing. Chu Yun also had a trace of doubt on her face. However, Elder Hua's heart was clear as a mirror. Since he had been in the Black Tortoise realm for the past few years, he had not only been teaching the Fire Lotus to cultivate, but he had also often gone out for a stroll. Therefore, he basically knew everything about the past of Qin Feiyang and the others. This Ice Dragon was extremely powerful. It was the greatest enemy of Qin Feiyang and the others. However, he didn't know where this Ice Dragon came from. There were no traces of this Ice Dragon in the Sky Cloud realm. Meanwhile, Old Hai and the Great Deacon looked at each other and their faces sank. Hearing the madman's oath, even they couldn't help but feel fear. Because in that oath, they truly felt the madman's determination and monstrous rage. This was not a joke. Although Madman couldn't do it now, he would definitely work hard in this direction. And with Lunatic's talent, he might really be able to do it one day. At this moment, after hearing the voices of Qin Feiyang and the mad scientist, the Sword Emperor was finally certain that this was not a dream. He slowly lifted his head and looked at the two of them. Looking at the two familiar faces, his eyes blurred. It really was these two little fellows all these years every night. He would recall those familiar faces because he was afraid that one day he would forget them. He was even more afraid that one day he would die and not have any memories. At the beginning, he still longed for someone to save him. But as time passed, he slowly despaired. The despairing him gradually became numb. He no longer fantasized about reuniting with his old friends. And now, Qin Feiyang and the madman suddenly appeared in front of him. For him it wasn't just hope, but also a fetter that could never be severed. It's all my fault. If I hadn't asked you to guard the 4 major exits, you wouldn't have been taken away by the ice dragon, and you wouldn't have suffered such torture. I'm sorry for making you suffer. Qin Feiyang bowed deeply, expressing the self-blame and regret in his heart. Silly child, it's not your fault. Every decision you make is for the sake of protecting the people of the world. Whether it's me or the Mermaid Emperor, we don't blame you. The Sword Emperor said with a hoarse voice. Drops of tears kept falling from the corners of his eyes, but his blood-stained face was full of smiles. This was a praise for the younger generation, as well as support without asking for anything in return. Thank you. Qin Feiyang lowered his head, and 2 drops of tears fell from the corners of his eyes. Although the Sword Emperor didn't blame him, the self-blame in his heart couldn't dissipate. It was like a nightmare that always filled his heart. Oh Qin, don't cry. Now that we know they're not dead, we have to be stronger than before. The madman patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. No matter what, they had to save the 4 of them. Qin Feiyang wiped away his tears and looked up at the Sword Emperor with a smile. We're here. You can rest assured. Okay. The Sword Emperor nodded. He didn't doubt Qin Feiyang's words at all. Qin Feiyang's gaze turned and landed on Old Hai. The smile on his face instantly disappeared, and only a cold light was left. He asked, where are the Mermaid Emperor, Black-Winged Emperor, and White-Winged Emperor? They didn't bring them. They're all in the Blood Palace. Old Hai sneered. What he meant was that even if they saved the Sword Emperor now, they would still be in their hands. They would never be able to escape from the Blood Palace. I want to see them immediately. Qin Feiyang said word by word. Impossible. Old Hai shook his head. They were the only bargaining chips in their hands. If they were all called over, and something happened, they would be rescued by Qin Feiyang and the madman. What would they use to threaten the 2 of them in the future? Moreover, the Demon Palace had already expressed that they were determined to help Qin Feiyang and the madman. Now that the Demon Palace had interfered, they couldn't be careless. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang and the madman clenched their fists. Although they were already mentally prepared, they still couldn't help but get angry. Then what about the bet we proposed? Old Hua spoke at this time with a provocative look in his eyes. But Old Hai didn't buy it at all. He sneered and said, do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Stupid enough to play such a childish game with you? As long as the Sword Emperor and the other 3 were in his hands, he would have the absolute initiative. So why would he take the risk? If he lost, then the initiative would become passive. Hearing this, Old Hua couldn't help but frown. This old thing was really not easy to deal with. But, suddenly, Old Hai changed the topic and looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman. He chuckled and said, if you can defeat Zhang Feitian, I can consider returning the Sword Emperor to you. The madman was stunned and immediately shouted, are you serious? Yes. Old Hai nodded, but a trace of ridicule flashed in the depths of his old eyes. Qin Feiyang, little madman, don't be fooled by him. He only said that he would consider. He didn't say that he would definitely release the Sword Emperor. Old Hua quickly reminded them. If they didn't pay attention to this point, even if the Blood Hall didn't release the Sword Emperor, they couldn't do anything. Old bastard, are you playing with us? When the madman heard this, he immediately stared at Old Hai with hostility. Yes, I am playing with you. What can you do about it? Haha, Old Hai raised his head and laughed. He didn't hide his ridicule. Qin Feiyang and the madman clenched their fists. Their faces were gloomy to the extreme. Looking at this scene, the Sword Emperor finally understood that they were using him to threaten Qin Feiyang and the madman. Although he was imprisoned in the Blood Hall, he knew nothing about the Sky Cloud realm and the current situation of Qin Feiyang and the others. Even now, he was still at a loss about everything in front of him. However, everyone could see that Old Hai was using him to threaten Qin Feiyang and the madman. Fei Yong, little madman, although I don't know the situation, if you compromise with them because of me, not only will I not be grateful to you, I will hate you and hate myself even more. The Sword Emperor's voice was stern as he expressed his determination. Qin Feiyong and the madman's eyes trembled. Even now, the Sword Emperor was still thinking about them and didn't care about his own life. Wouldn't this make them blame themselves even more? I know that both of you are loyal people, but please consider our feelings. People can be without ability, but they can't be without pride. As a 7-foot man, how can I be complacent? The Sword Emperor raised his head and puffed out his chest. Although he was in a sorry state, he had a domineering aura that made people submit to him. Qin Feiyong and the madman looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. The familiar Sword Emperor had returned, unyielding and unyielding. As a 7-foot man, how can I be complacent? Haha! Old Hai's laughter suddenly sounded, followed by a terrifying pressure that enveloped the Sword Emperor. Then, he said with a contemptuous smile, I want to see if you're really not afraid of death. What are you trying to do? Qin Feiyong and the madman shouted angrily. Elder Hai turned a deaf ear to him and shouted, Zhang Feitian, cut him up piece by piece. What? Skin him alive. Qin Feiyong and the madman's body trembled as their faces turned pale. The people from various forces also looked at Old Hai in shock. Just the thought of being skinned alive was enough to make one's scalp go numb. The blood hall was really unscrupulous in order to achieve their goals. Zhang Feitian was also stunned. Then a cruel look appeared on his face. He glanced at Qin Feiyong and the other man and took out a dagger. The dagger was about a foot long. It was pitch black and emitted an ice-cold light. You killed my brother. Now I'll let you have a taste of the pain of losing your family. He looked at Qin Feiyong and the madman with a ferocious smile. Then he rushed to the Sword Emperor, raised the dagger in his hand, and cut off a piece of flesh from the Sword Emperor's arm. Damn it, damn it. Qin Feiyong and the madman were furious as they rushed toward the island of the Blood Hall. Humph. Seeing this, Old Hai's eyes flashed with killing intent. A monstrous aura emerged and blasted toward Qin Feiyong and the madman. Oh no! Elder Hua's expression changed. He took a step forward and landed in front of Qin Feiyong and the madman. Then he waved his hand and his aura roared out and collided with Old Hai's aura. Then he stopped Qin Feiyong and the madman. He looked up at Old Hai and shouted, Do you still have any humanity left? Things have already come to this point. Do you still need to say such high-sounding words? Old Hai looked at the three of them with a mocking expression. Although he couldn't kill Qin Feiyong and the madman, he couldn't help but feel happy when he saw their desperate and powerless expressions. Chapter 32-35. I understand now. You are planning to be completely shameless. Elder Hu sneered. Elder Hai raised his eyebrows and said angrily, What does this have to do with you? Do you have nothing better to do? Qin Feiyong and Madman Mo are disciples of my demon palace. It is natural for me to help them. Is there a problem with that? Elder Hu said angrily. Fine, do as you wish. But tell me, what can you do now? Elder Hai laughed. Not only did he make Qin Feiyong and Madman Mo hesitate, but he also made this old bastard a checkmate. It was killing two birds with one stone. Elder Hua's face was gloomy. If he didn't care about Jian Huang's life, he would definitely make a move. But now Jian Huang was in front of Elder Hai. If he made a move, Elder Hai could kill Jian Huang at the same time. Feiyong, little madman, don't worry about me. You know that death isn't scary to me. What I am afraid of is implicating the people around me. I don't want to be a burden to you. Jian Huang said without any fear of death on his face. How can we not care about you? Qin Feiyong and Madman Mo muttered. One of their goals in coming to the Sky Cloud realm was to rescue the four of them. If Jian Huang really died in front of them, not only would they feel guilty for the rest of their lives, they would also be too ashamed to see Qin Batian and Lu Zhengyang. Death isn't scary? Zhang Feiqian sneered. He raised his sword and cut off a few more pieces of flesh from Jian Huang's arm. However, Jian Huang's expression didn't change. His body that was riddled with scars still stood tall and straight. Young man, although your talent is better than mine, you will never be able to compare to what I have experienced in my life. In my opinion, death isn't scary at all. What's scary is dying without dignity. Hearing Jian Huang's words, Zhang Feitian couldn't help but clench his fists. He thought of Zhang Feiyu's death. At that time he said the same thing to Zhang Feiyu. But what about Zhang Feiyu? He knelt in front of a madman without dignity. Therefore, in his opinion, Jian Huang's words were mocking him in disguise. You want dignity? Haha. This is simply wishful thinking. Zhang Feitian sneered, and the dagger in his hand went straight for Jian Huang's ankles, cutting off the tendons of Jian Huang's legs. If he had only lost his cultivation, even if his tendons were severed, the Sword Emperor could still rely on his spirit to stand in the void or on the ground. This was because the power of the spirit was able to support his body. However, at this moment, his divine soul was also sealed by the bracelet made from the soul-sealing magic stone. He was now equivalent to an ordinary person. With his hamstrings snapped, his legs went soft and he fell to his knees. You want to humiliate me in public? Dream on. The Sword Emperor roared hysterically. His bent knees were forcefully stopped by his strong willpower. Kneel. Zhang Feitian also roared. The fact that he could still stand and not kneel made the anger in his heart even more intense. With another slash, he cut off both of the Sword Emperor's legs. The Sword Emperor fell to the ground, blood gushing out of his wounds. Aren't you still lying on the ground now? Zhang Feitian smiled sinisterly. Drops of blood dripped from the tip of the dagger in his hand. At this moment he looked particularly ferocious. You can make my body submit, but you will never be able to make my spirit submit. Therefore you are still a loser. Jian Huang raised his head with great effort and looked at Zhang Feitian proudly. Let's see how long you can be stubborn. Zhang Feitian was completely enraged. With a ferocious expression, he pounced forward and crazily slashed Jian Huang's body with his dagger. But from the beginning to the end, Jian Huang had a contemptuous look on his face. Although his body was being crazily tortured, he did not even frown. Even the powerhouses of the various forces could not help but admire such a temperament and perseverance. Sure enough, Qin Feiyang and Madman Mo were all extraordinary people. Although their strength was not that great, their fearlessness in the face of death and their defense of their dignity were awe-inspiring. Enough, enough. This daddy will fight with you. Not only will we decide the victor, but we will also decide life and death. Madman roared. His black hair was instantly dyed red with blood and his body emitted a monstrous aura. Little madman, do you really want me to die with everlasting regret? Jian Huang roared. We understand you, but you also understand us. Whether it is me or old Qin, we will not abandon our companions and live alone. We have not reached the end of the road yet. We should all work harder. Madman said. Jian Huang fell silent. That's right. Weren't these two brats just like that? They were cruel and cold-blooded to their enemies, but they were nicer to the people around them than to themselves. It was precisely because of this character that so many people followed them wholeheartedly. There would never be any betrayal with them. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, and then he raised his head to look at Elder Hai and said in a low voice, We can fight Zhang Feitian, but you must promise that you'll release the Sword Emperor if any one of us wins. What if I don't agree? Old Hai sneered. If I don't agree, Qin Feiyang muttered and suddenly roared, then today we will fight to the death here. Boom! The slaughter domain immediately opened and the blood-red longsword emitted a world-destroying sharpness. Qin Feiyang pointed his sword at the Blood Hall's people and said with a sinister smile, If you don't agree, I guarantee that none of your Blood Hall's core disciples, including you and the head deacon, will leave the heavenly cloud sea alive today. Hearing this, everyone present was greatly shaken. Even Old Hai and the Grand Deacon couldn't help but feel scared. The Blood Hall was the ruler of the Western continent. As for Old Hai and the Grand Deacon, they were the number 2 and number 3 figures in the Blood Hall. However, even with this being the case, Qin Feiyang still dared to say those words. His courage, his domineeringness made even them, the big shots, feel ashamed of their inferiority. Most importantly, no one doubted Qin Feiyang's words. Old Hai's eyes were gloomy as he suppressed the fear in his heart and nodded. Okay, I agree. But in advance, you can't open your battle soul, slaughter domain, or 3,000 incarnations. Battle soul. What does that mean? You actually said that you can't open your battle soul? Don't tell me that their fighting souls are their strongest moves? The people from the various forces were all surprised. Qin Feiyong and Mad Scientist looked at each other and nodded without hesitation. Okay, but during this period, the Sword Emperor can't stay in your hands because we don't trust you. Then what do you want? Old Hai sneered. Give the Sword Emperor to Uncle Rabbit. Here I trust it. Qin Feiyong glanced around and finally locked his eyes on the little rabbit. Old Hai glanced at the little rabbit and frowned slightly. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the little rabbit had a close relationship with Qin Feiyong and Mad Scientist. What if it directly handed the sword to Qin Feiyong and Mad Scientist? What? You don't trust Uncle Rabbit's character? The little rabbit looked at Old Hai's expression and a trace of displeasure crept onto its face. Old Hai's eyes flickered. Okay, we're here too. We promise to be fair and just. The big shot from Heavenly Temple said. Yes, Uncle Rabbit's character is trustworthy. If you continue to act like this and anger Uncle Rabbit, the consequences will be more serious than now. The big shot from Heavenly Temple warned. Old Hai let out a long breath and waved his old hand. The Sword Emperor, covered in blood, immediately flew to Sky Cloud Island. Qin Feiyong also waved his hand and a divine life pill with 7 dragon-shaped core chi flew to Sky Cloud Island. Uncle Rabbit, I'll have to trouble you. The little rabbit looked at him indifferently and waved its paw. The Sword Emperor slowly landed on the ground in front of it, and then the divine life pill fell into its mouth. Its injuries immediately healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It really is a pill with 7 dragon-shaped core chi. The rumors are true. Someone muttered. Qin Feiyong, little lunatic, now you can fight without any worries. However, you must be careful. Since Old Hai dares to bet on Zhang Feitian, this person's strength must not be simple. Elder Hua secretly warned. Okay. The two nodded. Qin Feiyong glanced at Zhang Feitian and then at Mad Scientist. Senior brother, let me do it. Aren't you courting death? Mad Scientist glared at him. The slaughter domain, the 3,000 clones, and the battle soul were all restricted. With Qin Feiyong's current cultivation, he was no match for Zhang Feitian. Qin Feiyong wanted to tell Mad Scientist the truth that he had comprehended the 5th profound of the law of causality. However, before he could say it, Mad Scientist threw the White Phoenix Divine Sword and the interspatial ring to Qin Feiyong and said, I'll go first. Believe me, this might be a chance for me. If I can't handle it, you can go first. Chance? Qin Feiyong was stunned. He looked at the White Phoenix Divine Sword in his hand and frowned. Since you're going first, why are you giving me this divine artifact? I don't need it. Of course I'm giving it to you. Mad Scientist pouted. Qin Feiyong did not understand what he said at all. No need to argue. Both of you go together. Zhang Feitian suddenly looked at the two with contempt and sneered. Qin Feiyong glanced at him indifferently and then looked at Mad Scientist suspiciously. What did he mean? You'll understand later. Mad Scientist took a step forward and landed in the sky above the sea. He turned to look at Zhang Feitian and laughed. Come. Haha. A mere half-step dominator actually wants to fight one-on-one with me. You didn't even bring a supreme-grade divine artifact. I admire your courage. Zhang Feitian looked up to the sky and laughed. Then he leaped and landed in front of Mad Scientist. You don't have a supreme-grade divine artifact now. Of course, I won't use a supreme-grade divine artifact. Otherwise, people will say I'm bullying you. Mad Scientist grinned. Bullying me? Who's bullying who? You'd better wake up. Zhang Feitian roared and released his aura. As soon as the aura of a small stage dominator appeared, the surrounding space began to collapse and shatter. Under this aura, Mad Scientist swayed like a leaf in the wind. It was difficult for him to even stand firm. Chapter 32-36. Qin Feiyong, you shouldn't have let him go alone. Elder Hua brought Qin Feiyong back to the island and looked at Madman from afar. His face was filled with worry. This is his own choice. I believe in him. Qin Feiyong smiled. But the gap between them is too big. Elder Hua frowned. This was a battle without any suspense. If it was just a spar, there would be no need to worry. But one had to know that this was a battle of life and death. Once he lost, he would lose his life. Not to mention that Madman was already a disciple of the Devil Palace. Even if he wasn't, it would still be a pity. Give him some confidence. Qin Feiyong took a deep breath. Although he said that, he was actually more worried than anyone else. Boom! On the battlefield, Zhang Feiyan's aura suddenly transformed into an invisible dragon that charged toward Madman. Who? Before he even made a move, Madman was sent flying by the roaring aura. Blood spurting out. Haha. This is your ability? I really feel that my brother's death wasn't worth it. He actually died in the hands of trash like you. Zhang Feiyan was so angry that he laughed. His divine aura surged out and enveloped Madman. The aura of a small stage dominator could completely imprison a half-step dominator. If it was someone else, Zhang Feiyan's aura would be enough to kill them. But how could Madman be the same? Of course not. He had opened all the doors of potential below the dominator realm. Perhaps even a peak dominator would find it difficult to imprison him with their aura. However, Madman stood motionless in the void, as if he was really imprisoned by the aura. Feiyu, this brother will take revenge for you. He will soon go down to accompany you. Once he dies, this brother will kill Qin Feiyong and let them all die with you. Zhang Feiyan muttered. Zhang Feiyan muttered. Killing intent surged in his eyes as he roared, "Die, you bastard! It's over just like that?" Everyone looked at this scene in astonishment. This was too fast. However, just as Zhang Feiyan arrived in front of the madman and threw a punch at his head, the madman suddenly grinned and tilted his body slightly to dodge Zhang Feiyan's punch. Then he raised his arm and punched Zhang Feiyan's lower abdomen. On his fist, the laws of thunder roared, emitting a terrifying aura. What? Zhang Feiyan was shocked. He wasn't imprisoned? Not good. I was tricked. Zhang Feiyan, be careful. Although he's only a half-step sovereign, he has the support of the power of laws. If his fist hits your lower abdomen, your sea of qi will definitely shatter. Someone from the Blood Palace shouted. Zhang Feiyan's cultivation was stronger than Madman's, but as long as his qi sea was shattered, it would be useless no matter how strong he was. Zhang Feiyan quivered and glanced at the madman's fist. He twisted his body in the air and the madman's fist brushed past Zhang Feiyan's waist. From this, it could be seen that Zhang Feiyan was not someone Zhang Feiyu could compare to. At the very least, in terms of reaction time and battle awareness, he was much better than Zhang Feiyu. However, the madman's battle awareness was not bad either. It could even be said that in the current generation, apart from Qin Feiyong, no one could be compared to him. This was because they had walked on the edge of life and death. Whether it was battle experience or battle awareness, they were far from what Zhang Feiyan and the others could compare to. Just as his fist missed, his tightly clenched fist suddenly loosened. The laws of thunder turned into a sharp blade and slashed at Zhang Feiyan's legs. With a loud crack, Zhang Feiyan's legs broke on the spot, and blood gushed out. The intense pain caused Zhang Feiyan's face to turn pale. You broke the Sword Emperor's legs, so I'll break yours. Do you have a problem with that? The madman stepped back and looked at Zhang Feiyan's twisted face with a cold smile. Little madman. The Sword Emperor had recovered a lot. Looking at the madman on the battlefield, a warm current flowed in his heart. At the same time, he was very surprised. He did not expect the little madman's strength to have become so strong. Looking at Zhang Feiyan, although he had lost his legs, his cultivation was still there, so it did not affect him much. At this moment he was floating in the air. The pride on his face had disappeared and was replaced with a gloomy expression. Although it did not affect him much, this humiliation was unbearable. A dignified lesser stage sovereign had not only been schemed against in the first round, but his legs had also been cut off. It was simply too humiliating. Elder Hai's expression was also very ugly. Everyone could see that he was full of confidence in Zhang Feiyan. However, his legs had been cut off by the madman at the beginning. This was simply a slap to his own face. Zhang Feiyan, if you can't beat him, go down and accompany your brother. Elder Hai, who was angry out of humiliation, secretly transmitted his voice. Zhang Feiyan's eyes trembled when he heard this. He stared at the madman with a sinister expression. He took out a few divine life pills and threw them into his mouth. Then a surge of law power surged out like a volcanic eruption. This was the laws of sword. Fifth profound, raging dragon. He roared, and thousands of sword chi turned into a huge dragon that carried monstrous killing intent as it pounced at the madman. Sudden lightning. The madman pointed a finger at the sky, and a pool of lightning appeared. Lightning fell like lightning. Following a loud explosion, the hair-like lightning energy shattered on the spot. The difference in cultivation was too big. Even if they were both fifth profound, the difference of two small realms made the madman unable to fight back. The huge dragon formed by sword chi shattered the sky and continued to attack the madman. It was like a real sword dragon with its mouth wide open. It was extremely terrifying. Senior brother. Qin Feiyong clenched his fists, and his heart was in his throat. However, the madman still had no fear. Boom! Blood-red light appeared. Blood demon art. However, after activating the blood demon art, the madman immediately frowned. It was as Elder Hua had said. This kind of divine art that increased cultivation was useless in the sovereign realm. However, if the blood demon art was useless, there was still the blood demon domain. He waved his hand, and a huge blood-red domain enveloped Zhang Feitian. However, Zhang Feitian's cultivation did not show any signs of dropping. The madman was dazed. Even the blood demon domain was useless? Elder Hua shouted, "Little madman, these are useless unless you fuse with the power of law and turn it into a heaven-defying divine art. It's all gone." The madman murmured. He suddenly smiled and looked at Zhang Feitian. "This is not bad. I can finally enter the great despair." What did he say? Not bad? Is he having a fever? Everyone was stunned. Why did he look so happy when encountering such a thing? This person must have been scared silly, right? Zhang Feitian was also stunned, but then he sneered, "You want to enter the great despair? I'll fulfill your wish." Roar! The giant dragon formed from sword energy let out a roar and charged at the madman with its mouth wide open. The law of death. What is the last step of the profound meaning? The madman turned a blind eye and slowly closed his eyes as the power of law around him surged. The law of lightning, law of death, law of slaughter, law of war, law of light, law of darkness. The power of the six great laws appeared at the same time, drowning out the sky. What? He actually grasped the law of darkness. 6 types of laws. He already has the qualifications to step into the perfection stage sovereign realm. What kind of monster is this? Looking at the 6 different types of laws, the various factions were shocked. They originally thought that this kid only grasped 5 types of laws, but they never expected that he actually grasped 6 types. No wonder he didn't even put a monster like Zhang Feiyu in his eyes. This was because he was much stronger than Zhang Feiyu. In his eyes, Zhang Feiyu's flaunting was just a clown's trick. Oh gee, what's going on? Is there such a coincidence in this world? At the same time, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance's disciples, the Deputy Alliance Leader, the Hall of Famers, and the Grand Elder's eyes trembled slightly. These 6 types of laws were exactly the same as Mo Wuhui's. This must be a coincidence. The Hall of Famers shook his head. He didn't believe that the madman was Mo Wuhui. Oh! In the blink of an eye, after the madman's 6 types of laws appeared, he began to evolve other types of law profound. The law of lightning's 5 types of profound. The law of slaughter's 4 types of profound. The law of light and the law of war's 3 types of profound. The law of darkness's 2 types of profound. Although the law of darkness was comprehended earlier than the law of light, no one in the Black Tortoise world had grasped the law of darkness yet. Hence, the madman had to study it himself, so his progress was slower than the law of light. Boom! The moment these law profound appeared, they blasted towards the giant dragon formed by the sword chi. However, without exception, all of them were like moths flying into a flame, never to return. Clang! Suddenly, a giant black hand tore through the sky and reached out from the void. The aura of death instantly enveloped the surroundings. Looking at the giant black hand, everyone felt as though it was the hand of the Grim Reaper. Even from afar, they could feel a sense of fear from the depths of their souls. This is the first profound of the law of death, the hand of the Grim Reaper. The Deputy Alliance Leader spoke. As the only person present who grasped the law of death, he naturally had the most right to speak. Hand of the Grim Reaper? The first profound? Although the law of death is one of the strongest laws, A mere first profound can block Zhang Feitian's fifth profound? Isn't this a little too whimsical? Someone frowned. The strongest laws could only be invincible within the same profound. How big was the difference between the first profound and the opponent's fifth profound? What was this person trying to do? Boom! The hand of the Grim Reaper blasted towards the giant dragon. Without any suspense, it shattered once again. Blood gushed out from the madman's mouth. The continuous shattering of the law profound had already caused him serious injuries. Even his physical body was already cracking. His body was dripping with blood, making him look like a bloody man. However, the madman seemed to be oblivious to all of this. His eyes were still closed. Moreover, the other laws had already disappeared. Only the law of death was left around him. Clang! With a loud bang, a huge square seal appeared above the madman's head. That seal was also completely black and was as large as a mountain. It was surrounded by flames of death. The aura of death in the void was even more terrifying. Chapter 32-37. The Second Profound Seal of Death. The Vice Leader spoke again. What is he trying to do? The first and second profundities are no match for the fifth profundity of the laws of sword. Even Little Rabbit couldn't help but frown. 6 laws. There is also the strongest law, Death Law. This little madman is already this powerful? The Sword Emperor was already dumbstruck by this scene. His understanding of madman was still in the divine land of the ancient world. In his memory, madman seemed to have only mastered the slaughter law and lightning law. But now, he actually had so many more laws, and each of them had already comprehended a profound ability. In the years that he had been imprisoned, how much suffering had Madman and Qin Feiyang gone through to achieve their current level of accomplishment? Boom! The seal of death carried a monstrous demonic aura, as it blasted toward the giant dragon formed by the sword Qi. Once again it was mercilessly crushed. However, Madman still had his eyes closed. No one knew what he was doing. Although all of this happened slowly from the beginning until now, it was just a turn of the head. The moment the seal of death shattered, Madman waved his hands, and the power of death roared in all directions. A huge domain covered the sky. The domain was like a barrier, and there seemed to be a demon roaring inside. Heaven and earth trembled violently, as if it was the precursor of doomsday. The third profound world of death forms a domain of its own, and summons the spirit of the demon, the vice leader murmured. This was already the third profound. Could he really be a Mohui? The reaction of the various forces became more intense. To be able to comprehend the third profound of the death law at such a young age. Moreover, the other profound of the laws weren't low either. He was worthy of being called a monstrous genius. Boom! The world of death was like an independent world. Under the roar of the demon, it blasted toward the giant dragon formed by the sword Qi, but it still couldn't resist and instantly disintegrated. Even if you have mastered 6 laws and comprehended the third profound of the death law, so what? With the fifth profound of the sword law, I can make you have no chance of turning the tables. Zhang Feitian laughed sinisterly. He was also envious of Madman's talent, but this envy turned into jealousy. So what if he was a monstrous genius? In front of an absolutely overwhelming cultivation, he couldn't withstand a single blow. But Madman acted as if he didn't hear him. Although the injuries on his body were getting worse and worse, and he was even in danger of being torn apart, he was still the same as before. Even his expression had calmed down. At this moment, he seemed to have entered a state where he had no desires and stood aloof from worldly affairs. Clang! With a loud bang, endless death energy surged into the sky, and a huge phantom appeared in the sky. That illusory figure was round in shape like a wheel. It was so huge that it almost occupied half of the sky. A terrifying aura of death erupted from the heavens and shrouded the land in an instant. Very soon, the illusory figure became real. It was indeed a round object that looked like a wheel. It was completely black and gray in color, and there were dense runes flickering on it. These runes looked especially strange, as if they were formed from the souls of the dead, and they were constantly struggling and roaring. This is the fourth profound, the Wheel of Death. The vice leader roared. Among the 6 laws, the law of death had already reached the fourth profound. He did not believe that there could be such a coincidence in this world. Madman Imo, Emohui. They were both surnamed Emo. Were they really the same person? It can't be. The Hall of Famers shook his head, still unwilling to believe it. Although he had not known this disciple for a long time, he cared for him very much. It was not an exaggeration to say that he treated him like his own grandson. But now, he was told that this disciple was Madman Mo. How could he accept this? Rumble. Loud bangs resounded through the world. The wheel of death was like the wheel of an ancient war chariot. It crushed through the sky and the void, and it collided with the huge dragon formed by the sword energy. But this time, the wheel of death did not immediately shatter, and it blocked the huge dragon. One was a fourth profound and the other was a fifth profound, but it was able to block it. This was enough to prove the strength of these strongest laws. However, the wheel of death did not stay in a stalemate for long before it shattered with a bang. At this moment, Madman's body finally reached its limit and shattered into pieces. Little Madman! The Sword Emperor cried out in grief. Elder Hua and Chu Yun clenched their hands tightly. At this moment they really wanted to rescue Madman. Not to mention them, even the powerhouses of the Sky Hall and the Temple of Gods were eager to make a move. Although Madman was not their disciple, the talent that Madman had displayed was already unparalleled. If he died like this, it would definitely be a loss to the entire human race. You'd better not break the rules. At this moment, the little rabbit spoke, sweeping her gaze over the powerhouses of the major forces with an extremely unfriendly gaze. Haha, so what if your talent is outstanding? Won't you still die in my hands in the end? Jiang Feitian laughed, and the huge dragon formed by the sword energy directly pounced on Madman's shattered body and soul. A terrifying edge swept in all directions. Madman's body was annihilated on the spot. That's right. It was turned into ashes, and not even a drop of blood was left. Immediately after, it was his soul. It also dissipated in an instant. Madman, the Sword Emperor's legs had already been reconstructed, and his injuries were basically healed. Seeing this scene, he immediately lay on the ground and roared in grief. His face was also full of self-blame. If it wasn't to save him, how could Madman die? Sigh. The powerhouses of the various forces also shook their heads and sighed. On this day they actually lost two geniuses. Not to mention Zhang Feiyu. Although his talent was good, his temperament was too bad, and it would be difficult for him to become a great person. But this Madman Mo, not only was his talent outstanding, his temperament, battle awareness and courage were all unparalleled. As long as he was slightly nurtured, he would definitely become an overlord in the future. What a pity! I already said, we can't let him go alone. Elder Hua's expression was also incomparably gloomy. At that time he should have forcefully stopped Madman. Although this would make Madman angry, at least he could have saved his life. As for the people of the Blood Hall, naturally, they were smiling very brightly. Especially Elder Hai. His old face was smiling like a blooming flower. Senior brother, Qin Feiyang's entire person also withered. He was not willing to believe it, but the fact in front of him made him have no choice but to accept it. He had never thought that his senior brother Madman would die in battle one day. Wait! Suddenly, Qin Feiyang seemed to have thought of something and lowered his head to look at his hands. In his left hand was the White Phoenix Divine Sword, and in his right hand was Madman's interspatial ring. Interspatial ring. Only at this moment did he realize this important point. If Madman was really determined to die, then there was no need for him to take off his interspatial ring. Could it be? Qin Feiyang once again looked at the void that was flooded by the sword law, and his eyes flashed. He and Madman had taken off their interspatial rings many times, and every time it was because they had to comprehend the power of law in a desperate situation. Could it be that Madman also wanted to use Zhang Feitian to comprehend the fifth profound of the death law? That's right. It must be so. Madman had said at the beginning that he could finally enter a desperate situation. At first he did not understand this sentence, but now that he thought it through, it was as if he was enlightened, and he suddenly understood. He understood. He completely understood. This was the reason why Madman gave him the White Phoenix Divine Sword. Madman wanted to give up all means and let himself enter a desperate situation, so that he could find a breakthrough in despair. However, even so, could Madman do it? After all, this was not the thunder law but the death law, one of the strongest laws. At this moment, death? Could it be that madman wanted to personally experience the process of death? Good heavens, his guts were really heaven-defying. Was he not afraid of dying? Haha, he is simply an ant-like small character, unable to withstand a single blow. Zhang Feiyu raised his head and laughed. Suddenly, he looked at Qin Feiyang with eyes full of contempt and resentment, and said with a sinister smile, "Your brother is already dead. Now it's your turn, come and accept your death." Everyone looked at Qin Feiyang. "Feiyang, don't go." Sword Emperor roared in pain. Madman was already dead, and he did not want Qin Feiyang to die to save him. "Qin Feiyang, you have to think carefully," Elder Hua and Chu Yun hurriedly advised. "Qin Feiyang, we agreed in advance that as long as either you or Madman Mo defeats Zhang Feitian, I will release Sword Emperor. If you don't go up now, then don't blame me for being merciless." At this time, Old Hai also looked at Qin Feiyang and coldly smiled. "Shut up." Elder Hua immediately glared at Elder Hai. Elder Hai chuckled, then fell silent and looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. However, Qin Feiyang acted as if he did not hear any of this. His eyes were fixed on the void covered by the sword law. "Senior brother, I believe in you. You can definitely." His hands were tightly clenched together. He was a little nervous but also a little expectant. Seeing Qin Feiyang's reaction, Zhang Feitian also looked at the void and asked with a strange expression, "Don't tell me you're still hoping that he's not dead." "Haha. If he's still not dead, I'll chop off my head and let you sit on it." The core disciples of the Blood Hall roared with laughter. They looked at Qin Feiyang with eyes full of mockery. However, Qin Feiyang was too lazy to pay attention to them. "Stop dreaming. For a half-step ruler to be able to survive in front of a minor stage ruler like me, and one with a fifth profound at that, it'd be too unreasonable. Besides, can you sense his aura now? Don't waste time. Hurry up and accept your death. I'll send you down to reunite with him." Zhang Feitian had his hands behind his back. His eyes were full of mockery. He could even instantly kill the madman, who had grasped the law of death, let alone Qin Feiyang. "Emoyuan." Suddenly, a shout sounded out of nowhere. Qin Feiyang was worried about the madman's safety. When he heard this voice, he immediately looked in the direction of the voice. When he looked, his heart trembled. The person who spoke was the vice leader. Chapter 32-38. "It's really you." The Vice Alliance Master's face darkened. He found it hard to accept that lunatic was Mo Wuhui. Hence he wanted to confirm it. How could he confirm it? Hence he thought of Qin Feiyang. If lunatic was really Mo Wuhui, then this Qin Feiyang was most likely Mo Yuanyuan. Indeed, when he heard the name Mo Yuanyuan, Qin Feiyang's instinctive reaction confirmed everything. When the Hall of Famers saw Qin Feiyang's reaction, they were heartbroken. They roared, "Tell me yourself, are you Mo Yuanyuan? Is lunatic Mo Wuhui or not?" The Great Elder and the disciples of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance also stared at Qin Feiyang. "Mo Yuanyuan? Mo Wuhui?" The core disciples of the Devil Hall were stunned. They also looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Mo Yuanyuan was a well-known name in the Eastern continent. Hence they all knew about him. However, only Elder Hua, Chu Yun, Zhao Shaojin, Fire Dragon, Black Dragon, and Fire Luan knew that Mo Yuanyuan was Qin Feiyang. Hence, when they heard that Mo Yuanyuan was Qin Feiyang, the core disciples of the Devil Hall were stunned. As for the people of the Heavenly Hall and Deity's Hall, they were confused. Why was there another Mo Yuanyuan? Although Qin Feiyang had done many shocking things with the identity of Mo Yuanyuan, compared to the Battle of the Sovereign Weapon, it was not worth mentioning. Hence, it did not attract the attention of the two factions. The Vice Alliance Master looked at the people of the various factions. A trace of sadness appeared in his eyes. He sighed and said, "Our Rogue Cultivator Alliance has also produced two monstrous disciples in recent years." Everyone immediately looked at the Vice Alliance Master. These two disciples are called Mo Yuanyuan and Mo Wuhui. They are brothers. And this Mo Wuhui has mastered the law of death, law of lightning, law of massacre, law of war, law of light, and law of darkness. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be stunned. Isn't this exactly the same as Madman Mo's power of law? What about Mo Yuan? Someone asked. This Mo Yuan's talent is even more outstanding. Before he became a half-step ruler, he had already grasped 7 types of law energies. The Vice Alliance Master cried out bitterly. What? He already grasped 7 types of laws before becoming a half-step sovereign. Everyone present, without exception, revealed a look of astonishment. This was more than just monstrous. He was simply a monster, a pervert. Moreover, among the 7 laws he's grasped, there's one that's the strongest, the law of karma. Most shocking of all, before he even stepped into the half-step ruler realm, he had already comprehended the 4th intent of the karma law. The vice leader said. Indeed, when Qin Feiyong had comprehended the 4th profundity in Cloud Sea City, he hadn't even stepped into the half-step sovereign realm. My goodness, this is too heaven-defying. Where are they? Let us take a look. The disciples of the Heavenly Hall and the Deity's Hall shouted. One of them is my disciple, while the other is a disciple of the Hall of Famers. We treated them like our own grandchildren. Furthermore, we also have great hopes for them. We even sealed off all information related to them. But I never imagined that they would actually be Madman Mo and Qin Feiyong. The vice leader suddenly turned to stare at Qin Feiyong. His eyes filled with rage. What? Those two are Qin Feiyong and Madman Mo. Then isn't Qin Feiyong that Mo Yuan who grasped 7 types of law energies? The leaders of the Heavenly Hall and the Deity's Hall stared at Qin Feiyong, their eyes flickering. What kind of monster was this? Elder Hai and the Grand Deacon of the Blood Hall were similarly shocked. Although the vice leader had colluded with the Blood Hall, he had not revealed the matter of Mo Yuan and Mo Wuhui to the Blood Hall, so he only knew about it now. The Hall of Famers completely disregarded his image and shouted, Qin Feiyong, answer me, are you or are you not? Oh Qi, is there a need to ask? It's obvious. Look again, they are now participating in the exchange as core disciples of the Devil Hall. Doesn't this mean that they are spies sent by the Devil Hall? The vice leader said angrily. I don't believe it. The Hall of Famers shook his head. This blow was too big for him. However, Qin Feiyong was not in the mood to care about these issues. He raised his head and continued to look at the void covered by the sword law. It turns out that your talent is also so terrifying. However, your cultivation is only SOSO. Killing you is as easy as killing a dog. Haha. I really didn't expect that 2 peerless monsters would die in my hands today. Fei Yu, with them buried with you, you didn't die in vain. Zhang Feitian stared at Qin Feiyong and laughed. Because Qin Feiyong's cultivation was only at the half-step dominator level. A half-step dominator level cultivation was no different from an ant in front of him. Qin Feiyong, come, don't struggle. Let me happily send you to hell. Zhang Feitian laughed. When he thought of killing 2 peerless monsters, the joy in his heart was uncontrollable. And he, Zhang Feitian, could rely on this battle to become famous in the entire Sky Cloud realm. So that's how it is. Death is not the end, nor is it the end. Death is just another way of reincarnation. It is also the beginning of a new life. However, what everyone did not know was that at this moment, a voice suddenly floated in the void. However, no one could hear this voice, not even Qin Feiyong. Moreover, the owner of this voice was a lunatic who had already died. Death, hell, reincarnation, I understand. This is the 5th profound of the law of death, the gate of hell. The lunatic's voice sounded again, but still no one heard it. However, in the next moment, a terrifying law of death suddenly surged out of the void enveloped by the law of sword. Qin Feiyong was the first to notice the law of death, and his spirit was immediately lifted. He didn't die. Success. This guy really couldn't bear to leave everyone to die. Immediately after, the others also noticed the sudden emergence of the law of death and looked up in surprise. The law of death actually emerged? What's going on? Could it be that the lunatic didn't die? Clang! In the next instant, the peak of the sky exploded with an earth-shaking explosion. At the same time, the law of death surged into the sky like a waterfall. In just an instant, the sky that could be seen was enveloped by the law of death. This is... The vice leader looked up, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. What is this? Everyone looked at him in surprise. However, the vice leader turned a deaf ear to them. He stared at the surging law of death in the sky and clenched his hands together even harder. Clang! The loud noise sounded again, as if a gate of hell was opening. The aura of death was even more terrifying. This world seemed to have turned into hell. Time passed breath by breath. Suddenly, in the law of death, a vague outline appeared. Gradually, the outline became clearer and clearer. Finally, a blood-red stone door appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The stone door had 2 doors and it was thousands of feet tall. It was as if it was dyed in blood and emitted a soul-stirring aura. However, the stone door was tightly shut, and it felt like hell was behind the door. Moreover, on the 2 doors, there were 2 sinister skulls engraved, like 2 roaring devils, causing one's scalp to go numb. What the hell is this? Someone roared. The aura of death was too shocking. This is the gate of hell, the 5th profound of the law of death. The vice leader spoke word by word, his eyes filled with regret and anger. This was because he was the one who taught the lunatic the law of death. Moreover, he was the one who guided the lunatic to find the profound of the law of death at the edge of death. However, he never expected the lunatic to be Mo. He had personally nurtured an enemy, and the most important thing was that the other party had succeeded. How could he not be angry? The 5th profound, the gate of hell. So he fought with me to comprehend the 5th profound of the law of death? After all this time I even helped him? Zhang Feitian muttered to himself, his whole person stunned. He thought that the other party was dead, and his heart was satisfied. However, he never expected the other party to comprehend the 5th profound of the law of death. This was a bigger blow to him than the vice leader and the Hall of Famers. He was going crazy. His embarrassment turned into anger. The law of swords surged out, and he activated the 5th profound and blasted it toward the gate of hell. His whole person was gritting his teeth, looking exceptionally sinister. I actually helped you. I can't accept this. Zhang Feitian roared. If you can't accept this, what can you do? The lunatic's voice sounded, and it came from the sky above. Everyone was slightly stunned and quickly looked toward the direction of the voice. They saw a figure standing above the gate of hell. If that wasn't the lunatic, who else could it be? However, the current him was in the form of a divine soul. And everyone had a look of suspicion. When did he run up there? It's the law of death from before. Previously, his remaining divine soul followed the law of death and went to the top of the sky. The vice leader said in a deep voice. So that's how it is. Everyone nodded in realization. Old Qin, I am 1 step ahead. The lunatic stood above the gate of hell and laughed. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. However, before the lunatic's voice faded, a divine light descended from the sky and merged with the lunatic. The lunatic's divine soul and physical body were instantly reconstructed. What? Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. As for the madman himself, he was also stunned. His physical body and divine soul were reconstructed just like that? That's too fast. This old man once heard that after comprehending the 5th profound of the law of death and life, the heavens will bestow a blessing to the person who comprehended it. It seems that the blessing the lunatic received is to reconstruct his physical body and divine soul. However, this blessing can only be given once, so it can be considered a small reward for the person who comprehended it. Elder Hu whispered. Chapter 32-39. Blessing. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect there to be such a thing. Then why isn't the law of karma? They're both ultimate laws, so you can't favor one over the other. Although they're both ultimate laws, they represent different meanings. The law of life and death, one is life and the other is death. Nothing in the world can escape the fate of life and death. Therefore, the law of life and death is more special. Elder Hu smiled. Isn't it the same for the law of karma? Who in the world can escape the fate of being entangled by karma? Qin Feiyang frowned. Although that's the case, if you weren't born in this world, would you have karma on you? Therefore, in truth, life and death are the root of all things. Elder Hu smiled. Life and death are the root of all things? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. When he heard this, his heart seemed to throb inexplicably. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying divine aura erupted. Qin Feiyong came back to his senses and raised his head to look at the madman. He saw the madman's aura rising crazily. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation had stepped into the initial stage of the ruler realm. Haha, the madman laughed proudly. He was finally one step ahead of Qin Feiyong. Don't get carried away. Our battle isn't over yet. Zhang Feitian roared. The fifth profundity of the Law of Sword rushed forward aggressively and blasted toward the madman. Don't worry, I won't be like your younger brother. I won't even forget my name. The madman mocked. Then he soared into the sky and slammed his palm toward the Hell's Gate. Suppress. Boom. The Hell's Gate suddenly fell from the sky and collided with the giant dragon formed by the sword energy. A destructive aura immediately surged out in all directions like a tide. At the same time, following a kacha sound, cracks began to appear on the Hell's Gate. It seems like the difference in cultivation can't be made up for. Elder Hu shook his head. Although the madman had comprehended the fifth profundity of the Law of Death and raised his cultivation to the initial stage of the sovereign realm, he was still a small realm lower than Zhang Feitian. Even though the fifth profundity of the Law of Death was powerful, it was impossible for it to crush people of the same cultivation level as it could. This is quite tricky. The madman sneered and waved his hand. The gate of hell soared into the sky and suppressed the giant dragon once more. The two collided once again, and the Hell's Gate shattered on the spot. However, the huge dragon formed by the sword chi was also torn apart. It was facing the risk of collapsing. Ultimate laws of nature are indeed different. There's a difference of one minor level, and they almost fought to a draw. Many of them had looks of envy in their eyes. However, Madman looked displeased. Who set the rule that only those of the same level could be invincible? In any case, it was still an ultimate law, so why couldn't it skip levels? Even if it was only one level higher, it would be good. Boom! He shook his head. With a wave of his hand, the fifth profundity of the Law of Lightning appeared and blasted towards the giant dragon like a bolt of lightning. With a loud bang, the giant dragon finally shattered. If I can fulfill your wish, I can also kill you. Zhang Feitian was enraged. A blood-red wave surged out. It was the Law of Slaughter. Clang! A sword chime reverberated in the sky as a giant sword appeared above Zhang Feitian's head. The giant sword was tens of thousands of feet long and was completely blood-red as if it was cast from blood. The moment the giant sword appeared, heaven and earth seemed to have turned into a sea of murderous intent. This is the fifth profundity of the Law of Slaughter. Heaven punishing. Elder Hu looked at the madman in the sky with a trace of worry in his eyes. Heaven punishing. Qin Feiyong muttered as he looked at the blood-red giant sword and carefully sensed the aura it emitted. Because he had also grasped the Law of Slaughter, he could observe it closely. If he was lucky, he might be able to comprehend something important. Thunder crash. Suddenly, Zhang Feitian roared again. The Law of Lightning roared and a pool of lightning appeared in the sky. That's right, this was the fifth profundity of the Law of Lightning. In other words, the three fifth profundities that Zhang Feitian had grasped were the Law of Lightning's thunder crash, the Law of Slaughter's heaven punishing, and the Law of Sword's raging dragon. He activated the fifth profundity of the three laws in one go. He's not planning to give Madman Mo any chance. Madman Mo is one stage lower than him. Can he win? Some people had anticipation in their eyes. Could this little madman create a miracle? There was no suspense. The people of the Blood Hall all sneered. So what if he comprehended the fifth profundity of the Law of Death? One had to know that this was the sovereign realm, not the imperishable realm. It wasn't even the nine heavens realm below the imperishable realm. The paragon god in the sovereign realm, unless there was a heaven-defying divine item, nothing could make up for the difference in cultivation. Firmament. The madman looked at the sky and shook his head. Heavens, how good would it be if the blessing you bestowed was the fifth profundity of the Law of Slaughter? If it was the fifth profundity of the Law of Slaughter, then he would be able to step into the early stage of the sovereign realm. At that time, with the fifth profundity of the Law of Death, he would be able to crush Zhang Feitian. Unfortunately, this was just wishful thinking. Are you still having such a beautiful dream? Qin Feiyong was speechless. Being able to help you reconstruct your divine soul and physical body is already a great blessing. He's not dreaming. Elder Hu shook his head. What? Qin Feiyang looked at him, stunned. I heard that a long time ago, when a monstrous genius comprehended the fifth profundity of the law of life. The blessing he bestowed was the fifth profundity of the law of life. Elder Hua smiled. There really was such a thing? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. It's hard to say when it comes to blessing. It depends on one's luck and fortune. Of course, this has nothing to do with you because you haven't comprehended the law of life and death. Elder Hua raised a very realistic question. If you haven't comprehended the law of life and death, why do you care about this? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled helplessly. Rumble. Clang. While they were talking, the madman retracted his gaze and looked at Zhang Feitian. The fifth profundity of the law of lightning and the fifth profundity of the law of death were activated at the same time. Now I'll send you to the real hell. Zhang Feitian roared. And the three profundities carried monstrous divine might as they charged toward the madman. I'm afraid you'll have to put in more effort. The madman snorted and looked down at Zhang Feitian like a king. He then waved his hand, and the two profundities fell. At this moment, the leaders of the various forces had tacitly set up a barrier around the small island they were on. Boom! The five profundities collided like comets, and a destructive shockwave spread out in all directions. Puff! The madman's body shook, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, the two profundities were shattered. As for Zhang Feitian's three profundities, only the blood-red giant sword had cracks on it. The other two profundities were still intact. Did you see that? This is the difference in cultivation level. Zhang Feitian laughed proudly as the three profundities charged toward the madman. The madman wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then lowered his head and looked at the blood on his hand. Did you know? Fresh blood can make me even more excited. He chuckled as if he was talking to himself, but it also seemed like he was talking to Zhang Feitian. At the next moment, he lowered his head and looked at Zhang Feitian with a hideous smile. A thick bloody aura surged out of his body, and a cold and ruthless aura rolled out of his body. At this moment, his temperament changed drastically, and he was like a violent beast. This is... The vice leader's eyes trembled. That's right. This is your grandson Yuan's peak-grade heaven-defying technique. The battle's secret art. The madman looked at the vice leader with a cold smile. Then he activated his profundities and charged toward Zhang Feitian. Battle's secret art. Damn it, it's really you guys. The vice leader roared. The Hall of Famers finally accepted this fact, and his old face was filled with pain. Why? It wasn't easy to meet such an outstanding disciple, but he was actually a spy sent by the Demon Hall. Battle's secret art. Zhang Feitian looked suspiciously at the madman, but then he didn't take it to heart. It was just a peak-grade heaven-defying technique. What could it do? Arrogance comes with a price, Qin Feiyang muttered. Seeing Zhang Feitian's attitude, he knew that this person had underestimated the power of the battle's secret art. One had to know. The battle's secret art had the same effect as the slaughter field, which was to increase the strength of the physical body. Back then, during the battle between the madman and Yi Yuan was only at the imperishable realm, but he relied on the battle's secret art to forcefully increase his physical body and strength to the ruler realm. If the imperishable realm had such a powerful effect, then what about the madman's current cultivation? The madman had just become a ruler, and even if the battle's secret art was only a peak-grade heaven-defying divine artifact, it could still increase his physical body and strength by 4 levels. In other words, in the end, his physical body and strength could be increased to the peak ruler realm. Although his cultivation didn't increase, the strengthening of his physical body would play a crucial role, because the strengthening of his physical body would allow him to withstand more damage. He was confident that as long as his physical body reached the peak ruler realm, even if there was a difference of a small realm, he would be able to turn the tables and trample the madman under his feet. Because if the madman's physical body became stronger, then Zhang Feitian's physical body would seem weaker. At that time, the madman only needed to find a chance to get close to Zhang Feitian, and then shatter his physical body with one punch. And now, relying on the fifth profound of the law of death, Zhang Feitian couldn't kill the madman in a short time. The madman's injuries were getting worse, and he was bleeding more and more. But at the same time, the madman's physical body was getting stronger. The profound of the battle's secret art was this. The more injured and the more blood loss, the stronger the physical body would be. Zhang Feitian also gradually noticed this point, and a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. What was going on? The madman's injuries were getting worse, but why was he getting stronger and stronger? Was it because of the law of war? But the madman hadn't activated the law of war yet. Kiki, a good show will play out slowly, you mustn't be anxious. The madman laughed again and again. His entire body was covered in blood, and the large and small wounds on his body were shocking, but he didn't feel weak at all. Chapter 3240. The more Zhang Feitian fought, the more shocked he became. What was going on? Boom! The collision of intents and abilities caused less and less damage to the madman. Because his physical body was getting stronger, his endurance was increasing, so the damage he received was naturally decreasing. Old Man Hai, tell Zhang Feitian to end this quickly. The Deputy Alliance Master quickly sent a voice transmission to Old Hai and told him about the battle's secret arts ability. What? Old Hai's expression changed. The physical body and power of a sovereign realm expert? If the madman succeeded, wouldn't he be able to cripple Zhang Feitian with a single punch? Zhang Feitian, we can't drag this on any longer. Kill him quickly. Old Hai told Zhang Feitian everything about the battle character secret skill. Zhang Feitian's heart sank when he heard this. So that's why this person is getting stronger. Boom! All sorts of intents and laws appeared and attacked the madman. Seeing Zhang Feitian suddenly become irritable, the madman was slightly stunned. He then glanced at the Deputy Alliance Master. This old man must be behind this. However, it was too late to react now. Boom! A violent energy rushed out of his body and turned into an invisible storm that swept in all directions. At this moment, his physical body and power had reached the level of a sovereign realm expert. That surging power seemed to want to burst his body. That kind of unprecedented strength made him unable to help but roar to the sky happily. The show is finally starting. Madman sneered and unleashed all kinds of profundities of laws, attacking Zhang Feitian's profundities and divine abilities. At the same time, he took a step forward and his aura disappeared. Like a ghost, he instantly appeared behind Zhang Feitian. What? Zhang Feitian's expression changed. This speed had exceeded the limit of a beginner sovereign. This is the Spectre Ghost Steps, a legendary support-type divine art. The Hall of Famers' expression sank. When he became Zhang Feitian's disciple, he had given him 3 legendary items. Among them, one was a legendary item, one was a legendary technique, and one was a legendary support-type divine art. The Spectre Ghost Steps was the support-type divine will. Just like its name, once it started the Spectre Ghost Steps, it would be like a specter without any presence and without a trace. It could be said that this was a very heaven-defying support-type divine art. He had given this bi-type divine art to Madman because he was worried that Madman would encounter an accident. If he couldn't win, he could at least escape with the Ghost Steps. However, he never expected that he would end up helping a spy sent by the Demon Hall. He was furious. His tightly clenched hands were dripping with blood. He treated you so well, so why did he become a spy for the Demon Hall? In the blink of an eye, Madman landed behind Zhang Feitian and threw a punch without hesitation. That horrifying power gushed out like a torrent, annihilating the void instantly. Even Zhang Feitian could feel a fatal threat. You think you're the only one with a legendary item? Zhang Feitian roared, and a flaming armor suddenly appeared on his body. It seemed as if it was made of magma, and it flickered with dazzling divine light. Boom! The madman's fist landed on the armor, but it only managed to push Zhang Feitian back a few steps. Legendary grade heaven-defying armor? Madman raised his eyebrows and secretly communicated with the armor's artifact spirit. Do you want to evolve into a sovereign weapon? If you do, then follow me. I'll let you enter the land of origin to cultivate. What? The land of origin? The artifact spirit exclaimed. That's right. Old Qin's Black Tortoise world isn't a spatial item, but an independent world. Madman smiled proudly. An independent world, that's impossible. The artifact spirit found it hard to believe. How could a puny human have an independent world? I'm not lying to you. The Black Tortoise world has many legendary items. They all followed us halfway. Zhang Feiyu's Demon Dragon Sword is also in the Black Tortoise world. The Demon Dragon Sword is a legendary item like you. Do you want to lose to it? Believe me, I won't lie to you. Madman's tone was filled with sincerity. The Black Tortoise world was an independent world. Currently, only Elder Hua, Chu Yuan, and the Demon Hall's Hallmaster knew about it. Even Zhuo Tiansheng, Lu Zhongyuan, and Elder Yu thought it was a legendary item. Of course, Elder Hai and the Grand Deacon of the Blood Hall definitely knew about it. Because back then in the Sky Cloud Ocean, Little Wimp personally made a move. He activated his origin power and fought against the 3 sovereign weapons, including the Dragon God Sword. As for the Blood Hall's Hall Master, he definitely knew about it. Other than that, no one else knew about it. They all thought that the Black Tortoise world was a legendary item. The artifact spirit of the flame battle armor was silent, as if it was struggling. You only have one chance. If you miss it, don't count on it again. You better think about it carefully. Madman sneered. Their conversation was secretly communicated, so no one knew. Even Zhang Feitian, the owner, didn't know about it. Okay, the artifact spirit replied. It wasn't that it was heartless, but that it was too tempting. It could be said that no legendary item could resist the temptation of the land of origin. Great. Later on, when I'm in a stalemate with Zhang Feitian, you will suddenly leave his body and let me catch him off guard. Madman snickered. You're really treacherous. The artifact spirit looked down on him. Haha, Madman wasn't ashamed. Instead, he felt proud as he looked at Zhang Feitian. Zhang Feitian didn't know that his heaven-defying artifact had betrayed him. After stabilizing his body, he looked at Madman with a smug expression and said, "You want to turn the tables with a mere peak-grade heaven-defying technique? Who gave you the courage?" Boom! He waved his hand and a golden wave surged out. The golden wave was formed from strands of sword chi. This wasn't a law intent. It was a heaven-defying technique. Moreover, it was a legendary heaven-defying technique. Kill! Following his roar, the golden wave drowned out the sky and aggressively rushed towards the madman. Heh! The madman grinned and used the ghost steps. He didn't want to clash with Zhang Feitian and took another step to appear behind Zhang Feitian. You're courting death. With the protection of the flame battle armor, Zhang Feitian wasn't afraid at all. There was even a trace of mockery in his eyes. But at this moment, the flame battle armor left his body without any warning. Moreover, the artifact spirit immediately erased Zhang Feitian's blood contract. Zhang Feitian's body trembled as he spat out a mouthful of blood. This was the terror of a heaven-defying artifact. If you couldn't make it follow you wholeheartedly, it could erase the blood contract and leave at any time. What? Not only Zhang Feitian, but all the spectating forces were bewildered. What's going on? Why did the armor leave Zhang Feitian's body? Why did it erase the blood contract? The moment the artifact spirit forcefully erased the blood contract, the madman seized the opportunity and punched Zhang Feitian's lower abdomen. Roar! Zhang Feitian let out a miserable howl as he was sent flying like a meteor. One must know, Madman's current strength was definitely comparable to a perfect stage dominator. Although Zhang Feitian's cultivation was higher than Madman's, his physical body was much weaker. The power of this punch didn't just shatter his sea of qi, it also caused fatal damage to his physical body. It was almost torn apart. Haha, Madman laughed loudly as he looked at Zhang Feitian and said proudly, "You didn't expect such a sudden change, right? Crimson Fire Godly Armor, what are you doing?" Zhang Feitian looked at the floating armor and roared in exasperation. The Crimson Fire Godly Armor was silent for a moment before it turned into a stream of light and flew toward Madman, wearing him. What? It actually betrayed us and sided with Madman Mo? Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Qin Feiyang couldn't help but be dumbfounded by this unbelievable scene. This guy's methods were pretty good. He managed to buy this legendary heaven-defying artifact without anyone noticing. What's going on? Why did this artifact betray us? The people from the various forces were puzzled. Blood Hall's Elder Hai and the Grand Deacon, Demon Hall's Elder Hua and Chu Yun had a rough idea. Elder Hua and Chu Yun looked at each other with a smile on their faces. This little madman was really wicked. Why didn't he choose when he was fighting with Zhang Feitian? In a battle of this level, not to mention the sudden betrayal of a heaven-defying artifact, even a slight distraction was enough to be fatal. As for Elder High and the Grand Deacon, their faces were gloomy to the extreme. A divine artifact betrayed them, and the other party was Madman. This was undoubtedly a great humiliation for their blood hall. Most importantly, Zhang Feitian's Sea of Qi was destroyed, which basically meant that the battle was over. First, Zhang Feiyu knelt in front of Madman and begged for mercy, causing the blood hall to lose face. Now Zhang Feitian was schemed against by Madman. Most importantly, Zhang Feitian's cultivation was above Madman's, yet he still lost to Madman. In the future, their blood hall would definitely become a joke in the Sky Cloud realm. Are you very angry right now? Madman wore the Crimson Fire godly armor and looked at Zhang Feitian mockingly. Zhang Feitian stabilized his broken body and quickly took out a Divine Life pill and a Divine Essence C pill. Then, he stared at Madman and the Crimson Fire godly armor with a ferocious expression. His heaven-defying artifact betrayed him and sided with the enemy. Of course he was angry. However, at this moment there was more fear in his heart. Although his cultivation and strength were stronger than Madman's, now that his Sea of Qi was destroyed, no matter how strong he was, it was useless. Now you know. Strength alone isn't enough, you also need to have charm. Just like now, I just said a few words and the Crimson Fire godly sword abandoned you. Madman laughed proudly. Shameless. Shameless. The female disciples of various forces couldn't help but cast a look of disdain at Madman. However, after taking a closer look, this narcissistic little Madman really had a unique charm. Of course, the male disciples of various forces were really unhappy, because in their eyes Madman's arrogance was too strong, and he had stolen their limelight. Chapter 3241. Back to the main topic. Do you still remember how you tortured the Sword Emperor? The Madman chuckled as he looked at Zhang Feitian. At this moment, the Madman didn't have any killing intent on his face, but his smile made Zhang Feitian shudder. There was a type of person in this world that would smile brighter the more they wanted to kill someone. The Madman in front of him was no doubt such a person. Do you know? What happened to all the enemies that angered me? The Madman waved his hand and the Law of Death appeared, turning into a black sickle that was more than a meter long. The sawtooth was like the fangs of a fierce beast, emitting a cold light. Seeing this scene, Zhang Feitian was covered in cold sweat as he roared. I admit defeat. In his opinion, admitting defeat should end the battle. However, the little rabbit took a sip of wine and said indifferently, it's useless to admit defeat in a battle of life and death. Hearing this, Zhang Feitian's heart sank as he turned and fled towards the island where the blood hall was. His legs had been reconstructed after such a long battle, and his speed was very fast. However, he had lost his Sea of Qi and couldn't use the auxiliary technique, so it was useless no matter how fast he was. The Madman used the ghost steps and appeared in front of Zhang Feitian in an instant. Zhang Feitian stopped and quickly turned to the other side of the sea. As he ran, he shouted, Old High, Grand Deacon, save me. Old High and the Grand Deacon had gloomy eyes. No one can break the rules. That's right. We didn't interfere when Madman Mo was almost destroyed, so you guys better not interfere. Old Hua and Chu Yun stood out with cold eyes. There was no doubt. If Old High and the Grand Deacon really made a move, they wouldn't hesitate to make a move. At the same time, the little rabbit also shook the wine jar and looked at Old High and the Grand Deacon playfully. No matter who it was, as long as they dared to break the rules, they couldn't be forgiven. Old High and the Grand Deacon clenched their hands and looked at the Madman and Zhang Feitian with gloomy eyes. The Madman turned to look at the two and grinned. Actually, I also like to see your angry and helpless expressions. Don't forget, the Mermaid Emperor and the other two are still in our hands. Old High's voice was laced with undisguised threat. Don't forget that the Blood Hall isn't the only one with a Dominator divine weapon. We have one too. The Madman laughed. The meaning behind his words was obvious. If they dared to touch the Mermaid Emperor and the others, he would take them down with him. Finished speaking. The Madman then used the Spectre Ghost steps and caught up to Zhang Feitian in a few steps. The sickle in his hand mercilessly swung down at just the right moment, only severing Zhang Feitian's hamstring. Jiang Feitian let out a blood-curdling scream as his soul left his body. He continued to run for his life. Because his soul wasn't sealed, even if his hamstring was cut, he wouldn't be affected. Now that he had consumed the Divine Life Pill and Origin Sea Divine Pill, all he had to do was buy some time, and once his Qi Ci was restored, he would be able to regroup and kill this person. It was a good idea, but reality was cruel. Madman had been through hundreds of battles in his life, so how could he give him this chance? Clang! Jiang Feitian roared as his reconstructed legs were cut off once more. Blood spurted out, dyeing the sky red. However, this didn't affect him at all. He was still running for his life. The madman wasn't in a hurry. He used the specter ghost steps and followed behind Jiang Feitian unhurriedly. Every time he swung his sickle, a piece of flesh would fall from Jiang Feitian's body. In less than 10 breaths, Jiang Feitian's entire body was covered in cuts and bruises. It was a horrible sight. You like to be skinned alive, right? Then I'll fulfill your wish. The madman chuckled. A ray of death energy shot out like an arrow and pierced through Jiang Feitian's lower abdomen. Jiang Feitian's Qi Ci, which had been restored, was shattered once more. A bloody hole was left in his lower abdomen, and blood spurted out like an arrow. That's right. In front of the madman, Jiang Feitian didn't even have the strength to fight back. The madman had thousands of ways to torture someone. If he wanted to torture someone, he would make them wish they were dead. Jiang Feitian fell into despair when he saw his Qi Ci, which had been restored with great difficulty, shattering once more. The madman obviously wanted to torture him, and he wasn't stupid. Why would he give him a chance to restore his Qi Ci? Above the sea region, the madman was torturing Jiang Feitian as if he was toying with a mouse, causing Jiang Feitian's spirit and soul to collapse step by step. Great! On Sky Cloud Island, the Sword Emperor was delighted when he saw this scene. The resentment that had been bottled up in his heart all these years could finally be released. Qin Feiyang's expression was as cold as ice from beginning to end, let alone sympathize with Jiang Feitian. If it weren't for the restriction of the rules, he would have personally gone up and tortured this bastard together with the madman. The people from the various factions didn't say anything either. There was a good saying, karma is a circle, and retribution is its own. Jiang Feitian's current torment was entirely due to his own actions. However, the madman's cruel methods and bloody scene made many people feel fear. This person was indeed a madman. They couldn't afford to offend him. Kill me, kill me. Another 100 breaths passed. Jiang Feitian's flesh and blood were almost all gone. The eerie white bones were clearly visible. Only his head was intact. He had already collapsed. This kind of feeling was worse than death. It was better to die directly. You want to die. This daddy won't let you die. The madman sneered and took out a divine life pill and forced it into Jiang Feitian's mouth. The terrifying life energy suddenly exploded in Jiang Feitian's body. His mangled body instantly healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. You're a demon. Jiang Feitian roared in despair. He couldn't even make the decision to die. You're right. This daddy is a demon. That's why no one dared to offend this daddy before. Kid, you're quite formidable. You actually took the initiative to come to me. If this daddy was polite to you, wouldn't I be letting down your good intentions? The madman sneered and waved the death scythe again, cutting off Jiang Feitian's regenerated flesh and blood. This was a real living scraping. This kind of pain and despair could be endured by the Sword Emperor, but how could someone like Jiang Feitian endure it? Plop! He stopped running and turned to kneel in the void. He roared, I beg you, just give me a quick death. I'll kowtow to you. I only beg you to kill me with one strike. Aya! Didn't you tell your brother to have dignity when he knelt in front of this daddy? Why are you kneeling now? Do you not want your dignity anymore? The madman looked at him with a mocking expression. Don't, I beg you, give me a quick death. Let me die. Jiang Feitian shook his head. He had no other thoughts now. The madman sneered and kicked Jiang Feitian's face. Jiang Feitian's face split open on the spot and he howled in pain. The madman sneered in disdain and turned to Old Hai. Old Dog Hai, if you kneel and beg this daddy can let him go. Old Hai was silent. His eyes were frighteningly gloomy. I expected it. Why would a selfish old fart like you care about the life and death of your disciples? You disciples of the Blood Hall are really pitiful. You actually work for such a person. Should I call you stupid or stupid? Actually, you all mean the same thing. A bunch of idiots. The madman looked at the core disciples of the blood hall and grinned. His eyes were full of ridicule. Don't be so arrogant. Zhang Feitian is only above average in our blood hall. There are many people stronger than him. As a core disciple of the blood hall, they naturally wouldn't stand there and be scolded. Haha, so what if you're strong? You're still a bunch of stupid dogs. The madman laughed. The people of the blood hall were so angry that their noses were crooked. They were all elites of the blood palace, so how could they withstand such insults? Whoosh! A young man in blood-red clothes suddenly walked out. There was a trace of bloody light in his eyes as he stared at the madman. Quickly kill that trash Zhang Feitian. Then I'll fight you. The madman looked at the young man in blood-red clothes and swung the death scythe in his hand without turning his head. Zhang Feitian, who was behind him, was split in half on the spot. Blood dyed the void here red. Zhang Feiyu's face before he died had a look of relief. The madman swung the scythe again and crushed Zhang Feiyu's divine soul. He then looked at the young man in blood-red clothes and said, I have some impression of you. When you first came here, you jumped the highest when you flirted with my little Yun. What the hell? Chu Yun was stunned. She turned to Elder Huar and asked, Is he talking to me? If it's not you, who else could it be? Elder Huar smiled bitterly. The corner of Chu Yun's mouth twitched. Your little Yun? That's ridiculous. When did I become your little Yun? What a joke. Can't you look at the situation first? No matter what, she was still the vice hall master of the demon hall. What kind of scandal was this? Those who didn't know would think that there was an ambiguous relationship between them. That's right. But so what? The young man in blood-red clothes looked at the madman provocatively. The madman disdainfully turned around and used the ghost steps to land in front of the Sword Emperor. You've worked hard. The Sword Emperor grabbed the madman's shoulder. He was both gratified and guilty, because in his opinion, he was the one who had implicated Qin Feiyang and the madman. What are you talking about? A trace of displeasure crept onto the madman's face. At this moment, Qin Feiyang also flew over and landed in front of the two. He waved the White Phoenix divine sword in his hand and the bracelet on the Sword Emperor's hand broke with a crack. Then, Qin Feiyang took out a divine essence C pill and handed it to the Sword Emperor. But the Sword Emperor didn't seem to see it. He looked at the bracelet on the ground and then looked at the scar on his wrist that was caused by the bracelet. For a moment his eyes were filled with tears. He was finally free. Senior Sword Emperor, from now on no one can restrict your freedom. Hurry up and take it. Qin Feiyang smiled. Thank you. The Sword Emperor looked up at the two of them and bowed deeply. How can this be? We can't afford it. Qin Feiyang hurriedly reached out and pulled the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor raised his head and looked at the two of them. A smile finally appeared on his face. They were still the same two brats. Other than their cultivation being stronger than before, nothing else had changed. Then, he calmly took the Divine Essence C pill and put it into his mouth. His broken Qi C immediately began to recover. He also finally felt the long-lost power. Chapter 3242. Are you done chatting? The blood-red clothed youth impatiently looked at Qin Feiyang and Madman. Are you crazy? What does our chatting have to do with you? If you're really bored, do you see over there? There's mud all over the ground. Go play by yourself. Madman looked irritated. No matter where he was, there would always be a few annoying flies buzzing in his ears. The blood-red clothed youth raised his eyebrows and said gloomily, I'm challenging you. You're challenging us, so we have to answer you? Are you our grandson? Madman was speechless. What kind of logic was this? Looking for a sense of existence? Hearing this, the blood-red clothed youth clenched his fists and shouted, What's the point of arguing? Even if the two of you come at me together, I'll still crush you too. Sorry, I'm not interested in a meaningless battle. Madman shrugged and ignored him. The Sword Emperor had been rescued. As for the Mermaid Emperor and the other two, the Blood Hall didn't bring them along, so there was no need to waste time with the Blood Hall. The blood-red clothed youth glared at Madman, but then he suppressed his anger and sneered. I think you're afraid. Childish. Madman shook his head. It's really childish. Qin Feiyang chuckled. This kind of provocation might work on a conceited person like Jiang Feiyu, but in front of them it was simply a child's trick. The blood-red clothed youth's face was gloomy. If it weren't for the rules, he would have already killed them. Unfortunately, with the little rabbit in charge, he didn't dare to act recklessly. Qin Feiyang looked at the Sword Emperor and said with a smile, Senior Sword Emperor, you go to the Black Tortoise world to recuperate. Don't worry about anything outside, we'll take care of it. Okay. The Sword Emperor nodded. Although he didn't know what Qin Feiyang and Madman had experienced in these years, he could see from the previous battle that the two of them had the strength to protect themselves even in the Sky Cloud world. Moreover, his current cultivation was not even as good as Qin Feiyang's. If he stayed outside, he would only become a burden. Therefore, he might as well listen to Qin Feiyang. With a wave of his hand, Qin Feiyang sent the Sword Emperor to the Black Tortoise world and instructed Xia Yuan and the others to take good care of him. As for Xia Yuan and the other divine generals, their relationship with the Sword Emperor was even more obvious. Because they were comrades who had fought side by side against the dragons. That was a relationship of life and death. In their eyes they were blood brothers. Therefore, when they found out that the Sword Emperor had been rescued, a group of people immediately ran out to welcome him. Everyone's faces were brimming with joy. Qin Feiyang and the Madman looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. Although the Mermaid Emperor and the other two had not been rescued yet, the Sword Emperor's safe return was a good start. Thank you, Uncle Rabbit. The two of them looked at the little rabbit and bowed. If it wasn't for the little rabbit's deterrence, Old Hai wouldn't have returned the Sword Emperor to them so easily. What are you thanking me for? Don't make it sound like Uncle Rabbit has a personal relationship with you. Uncle Rabbit is just doing his job. The little rabbit glared at the two of them unhappily. Understood, understood. Uncle Rabbit is impartial and impartial. The two of us deeply admire you. We brothers will follow Uncle Rabbit's example in the future, and be fair and just people. The Madman roared righteously. Uncle Rabbit likes to hear that. Young people should carry forward the traditional virtues left behind by the ancients. The little rabbit chuckled. Yes, yes, yes. The Madman nodded repeatedly. Then go. The little rabbit waved his paw. Qin Feiyang and the Madman looked at each other and smiled. Then they flew toward the island where the demonic palace was. As for the blood-red clothed youth, they treated him like air and didn't pay any attention to him. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice with a smile. Senior brother, I realize that your flattery skills are quite impressive. What? You call this flattery? The Madman glared at him unhappily. Isn't that enough? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Look at the little rabbit's attitude. How comfortable it was to be flattered. What do you know? This is called discussing the matter as it is. It was the little rabbit who helped us a lot. Besides, a real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. What's the point of lowering your head? The Madman rolled his eyes at him. Okay. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Under the gaze of the various forces, the two of them returned to the island. At this moment, the core disciples of the demonic palace all looked at the Madman with admiration and admiration. Don't worship me like that. It's just a basic operation. The Madman smiled proudly. Hearing this and looking at the Madman's arrogant face, the good impression that the core disciples had of him disappeared. He was still someone who deserved a beating. What are you so proud of? Chu Yun stepped forward and slapped the Madman's head. What are you doing? I'm injured right now. The Madman glared at her with dissatisfaction. His injuries were indeed not light. If it were anyone else, they would have collapsed long ago. Chu Yun rolled her eyes and took out a divine life pill. She said coldly, take it. The Madman raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, just 6 dragon-shaped core energies? I don't care. After saying that, he took out a divine life pill with 7 dragon-shaped core energies, and deliberately showed it off in front of Chu Yun before throwing it into his mouth. Chu Yun's face instantly darkened, and the veins on her forehead bulged. What kind of person was this? She was kind enough to give him a divine life pill, but he actually despised it? It was fine if he despised it, But he actually said it in front of so many people? Wasn't he deliberately embarrassing her? Ahem. Elder Hua saw that the situation was not good and quickly comforted Chu Yun. All right. Don't you know his personality? If you want to be serious with him, you're just looking for trouble. After comforting Chu Yun, Elder Hua looked at the madman and gave him a thumbs up. Awesome. Of course. It's lonely at the top. The madman smiled proudly. The veins on Elder Hua's forehead bulged as he looked at Lin Fan's immodest attitude. Why was he asking to be taught a lesson? Madman Mo and Jiang Feitian's battle is over. Hurry up and arrange the next battle. At this moment, the little rabbit's voice sounded. However, apart from the blood-red-clothed young man, no one from the other forces stood up. They all turned their gazes towards Qin Feiyang. The madman definitely couldn't fight anymore. After all, his injuries were so serious that he wouldn't be able to recover without half a month, so it was naturally Qin Feiyang's turn. And they all hoped that Qin Feiyang would accept the challenge of the blood-red-clothed young man. If the madman was so strong, then what about Qin Feiyang? He hadn't stepped into the ruler realm yet, but he had already comprehended 7 laws and raised the law of karma to the 4th profound. His methods were definitely not simple. However, Qin Feiyang had been chatting with the madman and had no intention of accepting the challenge. Senior brother, how did you bribe him? Qin Feiyang looked at the scarlet fire godly armor on the madman and asked curiously, Isn't that simple? The madman snickered and muttered a few words in Qin Feiyang's ear. Qin Feiyang laughed. Qin Feiyang, did Madman Mo trick me? The spirit of the scarlet fire godly armor asked. He still didn't believe it. Of course he didn't trick you. But to enter the source land it will depend on your performance. But I can let you experience it first. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Okay. Let me see. The scarlet fire godly armor impatiently came off the madman's body. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent it to the black tortoise world. After the scarlet fire godly armor left, the injuries on the madman's body appeared before everyone's eyes. The core disciples couldn't help but take a deep breath. If they were in his shoes they would have collapsed long ago. Yet, this fellow actually looked as if nothing had happened to him. His endurance wasn't something they could compare to. The madman also closed the battle word secret technique. His entire body felt weak, but it was still within his endurance range. Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, I'll say it again. I want to challenge you. The scarlet-clothed youth spoke again. The feeling of being ignored was driving him crazy. But Qin Feiyang and the madman didn't seem to hear it. The madman said, Old Qin, this battle word secret technique can be used as a trump card, right? As he spoke, he deliberately raised his voice by a few decibels. Yes, it can. Qin Feiyang nodded. He glanced at the scarlet-clothed youth and couldn't help but want to laugh. Although the two of them were deliberately teasing the scarlet-clothed youth, the battle word secret technique was their trump card. They weren't joking. The battle word secret technique boosted the physical body and strength. No matter where it was, there were very few people with a powerful physical body. Therefore, the madman who had the battle word secret technique could kill his opponent in seconds as long as the opponent gave him enough time, just like when he fought Jiang Feitian. Of course, if the opponent knew about the battle word secret technique and didn't give the madman time and opportunity, the battle word secret technique wouldn't be of much use. In short, the battle word secret technique could only be unleashed when the opponent was caught off guard. However, Qin Feiyang and the madman didn't know that their high-profile discussion had angered the others. These people were from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, especially the vice leader. The original owner of the battle word secret technique was Yi Yuan, and he was the one who gave it to Yi Yuan. Now that the madman had taken advantage of it, how could he not be angry? Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, are you still human? The vice leader and the hall master treated you so well, but you actually betrayed them and became the demon hall's lackeys. I really feel bad for the two of you. The Rogue Cultivator Alliance's disciples began to crusade, and their eyes were filled with disgust. Hearing this, the two of them looked at the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. If you have even the slightest bit of conscience, you wouldn't have done such a thing. You're worse than animals. White-eyed wolf. The group of disciples cursed angrily. What do you know? You don't know anything, so what right do you have to scold us? Let me tell you, when you know the truth, you'll thank us. The madman said angrily. The truth? Do you think we'll believe you just because you say that? Do you think we're 3-year-old children? How did my rogue cultivator alliance have 2 scum like you? The group of disciples was completely blinded by anger and couldn't listen at all. Even the Hall of Famers and the Grand Elder were the same. However, the vice leader's heart trembled when he heard this. The truth? Did the 2 of them discover something? Chapter 32-43. We're scum. Madman was so angry that he laughed and shouted, "This daddy will tell you the truth now." But at this time, Qin Feiyong suddenly stretched out his hand to stop Madman. What? Madman raised his eyebrows. Now is not the time to fall out with the vice leader. Qin Feiyong transmitted his voice. What do you mean? Madman looked at him in confusion. Blood Hall won't let this go. They must have some backup plans, so now we must focus on dealing with Blood Hall. Qin Feiyong secretly said. Dealing with Blood Hall has no conflict with dealing with the vice leader, right? Madman was suspicious. Of course there is. It's already very difficult to deal with Blood Hall. With the addition of the vice leader, wouldn't our situation be even worse? So let's put the vice leader's matter aside for now. Qin Feiyong secretly explained. Madman pondered for a while and nodded. That makes sense. But this old man will definitely find an opportunity to deal with us. Instead of being schemed against by him, we might as well make the first move. No. For now, he won't blatantly deal with us. Do you know why? Qin Feiyong secretly smiled. Why? Madman asked suspiciously. Because after the battle between you and Zhang Feitian, he doesn't have much confidence that Blood Hall can kill us, so he will definitely have a backup plan. Qin Feiyong explained and then asked, let me ask you again, why did he ask for peace with us? I know this. Madman nodded and then said, he must want to get close to us first and then take the opportunity to make a move on us, catching us off guard. That's right. This is his purpose of reconciling with us. He wants to eliminate our vigilance first before making a move on us. As for the backup plan I mentioned earlier, that's exactly what I meant. If Blood Hall can't get rid of us in the exchange this time, then the vice leader will definitely have other thoughts. I'm sure that at that time, he will pretend to be magnanimous and forgive us for deceiving him. Then, he will continue to talk about reconciling with us. Because he still doesn't know that we already know that he is colluding with the Blood Hall, and we even have evidence. In his opinion, as long as his attitude is sincere, and he uses our master-disciple relationship to reason with us and move us emotionally, he will definitely be able to gain our trust. Qin Feiyong smiled secretly. I see. Madman nodded in realization. So for now we don't have to worry about him attacking us. At most, he'll send his disciples to cause trouble for us. Qin Feiyong smiled. All right. Let him have a few days of peace. Madman nodded. Seeing that the 2 of them had suddenly fallen silent, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance's disciple shouted, why don't you tell us the truth? Let's hear it. Qin Feiyong scanned the group and sighed. The truth is that we are not spies of the Demon Hall. The Vice Alliance leader was very nervous at first, but when he heard this, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like these 2 people didn't know about his relationship with the Blood Hall. Is this the truth? Are you telling a joke? The truth is right in front of us. You and Madman are both disciples of the Demon Hall, and you still dare to say that you're not spies? The group of disciples glared at the 2 of them. They were simply treating them like fools. Qin Feiyong said, I don't know if you believe it or not, but this is the truth. We only agreed to enter the Demon Hall before coming to the Heavenly Cloud Ocean. Then why did you change your appearance and infiltrate our Rogue Cultivator Alliance? The Grand Elder couldn't help but ask the question in his heart. Qin Feiyong pondered for a moment before looking at the Vice Alliance leader and sighing. This point is actually related to the Vice Alliance leader. Me. The Vice Alliance leader frowned. That's right. Back then, because of the matter with Wang Hui, you did everything possible to kill us, which made us very angry. Wang Hui's matter, anyone with a bit of rationality would know that it wasn't our fault, but you kept holding on to it. You even made Yi Tian and Yi Yuan personally come out. This makes me wonder if there's another reason behind this matter? Qin Feiyang said. So you infiltrated the Rogue Cultivator Alliance to investigate me? The Vice Alliance leader was shocked. This person's sense of smell was too terrifying. That's right. When I knew that you wanted to reconcile with us, I really didn't want to believe it, because you couldn't make me trust you. So I wanted to personally verify it. So we disguised ourselves as Mo Wuji and Mo Wuhui and entered the Alliance capital. Qin Feiyang nodded. The Vice Alliance leader asked, Did Zhao Eryong help you enter? Yes. However, Zhao Eryong doesn't know our true identities. We set up a trap to gain his trust. That's why he allowed us to enter the Alliance capital. Qin Feiyang said. The Vice Alliance leader couldn't know that Zhao Eryong helped him, otherwise it would implicate Zhao Xiaojin. As for this excuse, the Vice Alliance leader couldn't investigate it even if he wanted to. After all, Zhao Eryong was already dead, so he had the final say on whether it was true or false. Does Zhao Xiaojin know your identities? The Vice Alliance leader asked. Of course she doesn't know. As for why I'm so good to Zhao Xiaojin, there's naturally a reason. Through her, I can get close to your grandson Yitian. Because only by getting close to Yitian can I get close to you faster and gain your trust easier. The result proved that my plan was very successful. Not only did I gain your trust, but I also became the personal disciple of you and the Hall of Famers. Qin Feiyang said. Then did you find anything? The Vice Alliance leader asked. I really didn't. After getting close to you and getting to know you, I found that you're quite a good person. I even planned to find a time to confess to you. But I didn't expect that the Blood Hall would organize this exchange meeting and threaten us with Jian Huang's life. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he raised his head and looked at Old Hai. His eyes filled with disgust. Confess? The Vice Alliance leader muttered. In that case, the exchange meeting organized by the Blood Hall had ruined his good deed. Because if he really confessed to him and knew that Mo Yuan was Qin Feiyang, he could totally take advantage of the fact that they were unprepared to attack. That way it would be easier to kill Qin Feiyang and Jian Huang. But now, the appearance of this exchange meeting had made things even more complicated. When Old Hai heard Qin Feiyang's words, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. This was the so-called trying to be clever and making a fool of oneself. He didn't even know why they organized this exchange meeting. At this time he was also full of regret. If he waited a little more patiently, waiting for Qin Feiyang to confess to the Vice Alliance leader, wouldn't he be a turtle in a jar, waiting for them to slaughter him? But now they didn't manage to kill Qin Feiyang and Jian Huang. Instead, they sacrificed 2 genius disciples and even made this matter known to everyone, causing the Blood Hall to lose face. The gains didn't make up for the losses. The first elder came back to his senses and looked at the two of them angrily. Since that's the case, you can just confess to us. We're not unreasonable people. When the time comes, we'll definitely bring you to participate in the exchange meeting to rescue the Sword Emperor. Why must you join the Demon Hall? We thought so too. But first, if we confess to you now, I'm afraid you'll misunderstand us. Secondly, the strength of the Rogue Cultivators Alliance isn't enough to deal with the Blood Hall. That's why we thought of the Demon Hall. The Demon Hall Master's condition is that we have to join the Demon Hall before she's willing to help us. Not only is the Sword Emperor not our companion, but he's also our relative. We can't leave him to die, so we agreed to the Demon Hall Master's condition. That's the whole story, Qin Feiyang said. Hearing this, the first elder looked at Elder Hua and Chu Yun and asked, Is that so? That's right. Elder Hua nodded. Although he didn't know what Qin Feiyang was planning, he still planned to support Qin Feiyang. Sigh. The first elder sighed. The Hall of Famers also fell silent. It turned out that the two of them really weren't spies sent by the Demon Hall. At the end of the day, this matter was still the Deputy Alliance leader's fault. If the Deputy Alliance leader hadn't ordered the arrest of these two people, how could such a thing have happened? Unfortunately, it had already happened, and there was no way to salvage it. Suddenly, the Hall of Famers seemed to have made some kind of decision. She raised her head and looked at Madman. Do you still acknowledge me as your master? Madman was stunned. Lord Hallmaster, what do you mean by this? Could it be that You still want to maintain a master-disciple relationship with him? Although they were indeed forced to enter the demon hall, this has already become a fact. The demon hall and our rogue cultivators alliance have always been enemies. If you still acknowledge him as your disciple now, do you know how everyone will talk about you behind your back? The disciples of the Rogue Cultivators Alliance immediately looked at the Hall of Famers and shouted, "So what if they talk about me? This old man doesn't care." The Hall of Famers shook her head and looked at Madman. "Tell me the truth. Do you still acknowledge this old man as your master?" "Oh Qin, what should we do?" The Hall of Famers' sudden words caused Madman to be at a loss for a moment. He secretly asked Qin Feiyang for help. Looking at his current attitude, it's obvious that he doesn't want to lose you as his disciple. Moreover, I can't find any traces of fraud. To be honest, this hall master is really not bad. He gave me a very good first impression. If he really has nothing to do with the Blood Hall, I think you can continue to be his disciple. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and said through voice transmission, "He and the Blood Hall. I feel that there shouldn't be anything between them." Madman looked at the Hall of Famers with a trace of nervousness on his face, as if he was afraid that Madman would no longer acknowledge him as his master. "Don't feel that way. We have to be realistic. However, we can give him an answer. Let's stabilize him first. With him stabilizing the situation, the vice leader won't dare to scheme against us. Next, we can deal with the Blood Hall without any worries." Qin Feiyang thought to himself. "All right." Madman replied and looked at the Hall of Famers. "If you still acknowledge me as your disciple, then I'm naturally willing to acknowledge you as my master." However, Madman couldn't help but frown at this point. The Hall of Famers was overjoyed when she heard the first half of the sentence, but when she heard the word however, she became nervous again. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.